everyone, Novels Wonderland here. Thank you all for the love and support you've shown me and the channel.
Jujutsu Kaisen. I'm a Minecraft fan in the world of sorcery. Chapter 51 to 86, the battle ends. Boom. Elephant sat firmly on the cursed spirit's body before turning into a mass of shadows and returning to Megumi Fushiguro's shadow. Yoshino Junpei's cursed energy cannon also slammed heavily into the cursed spirit, the powerful impact sending it rolling 7 or 8 times on the ground before it struggled to stand back up. It could only be said that it lived up to its title as a special grade cursed spirit, to be able to get back up after taking such a heavy smash from Elephant and a blast from Yoshino Junpei. Its health bar was staggeringly thick. Huff, huff, huff. The cursed energy consumption for Elephant was indeed quite high. Megumi Fushiguro felt a sense of exhaustion after releasing Elephant. Fortunately, he had been undergoing cursed energy training, so he could now use another Shikigami while summoning Elephant, though the burden was slightly heavy. Meanwhile, Yuji Itadori could not use other curse techniques while activating the corrosion technique, meaning Yuji couldn't be considered an effective combatant right now. However, Yuji Itadori's corrosion technique had indeed brought immense pain and damage to the cursed spirit. Now they just needed to stall for time until the corrosion technique completely corroded all of the cursed spirit's cursed energy to achieve victory. After standing straight, the 3 mouths on the cursed spirit's face, abdomen, and tail simultaneously spat out a large amount of purple-black blood. The blood dripped onto the ground, instantly corroding it into small pits, and emitting bursts of black smoke. It difficultly moved its already somewhat stiff body, and once again assumed a combat stance. Whoosh! The cursed spirit raised its hand, and fired 3 rounds of piercing blood at the 3 of them. The piercing blood, augmented with the piercing ox curse technique, made Itadori and the others dare not take it head-on, forcing them to dodge to the side. Domain Expansion, Kyongi. Megumi Fushiguro released the Shikigami Round Deer, then used a Domain Expansion to fuse Round Deer and Tiger Burial, creating a new Shikigami with the powerful strength of Tiger Burial and the flight ability of Round Deer. Boom. The cursed spirit in front was slapped away by the Shikigami called Kyongi. Megumi Fushiguro also pulled the Tsurunuki Yari from his own shadow and followed closely, while Yoshino Junpei fired cursed energy cannons from behind as cover. Whoosh! Every hair on Megumi Fushiguro's body stood on end. He saw a streak of purple blood transformed into a blood arrow flying toward his head. He instinctively turned his face to avoid it, but his face was still slashed. A sliver of the cursed spirit's blood entered Megumi Fushiguro's body through the wound. The cursed spirit's blood, which had assimilated Yuji Itadori's cursed energy, was equally toxic. Megumi Fushiguro only felt a wave of intense pain throughout his body, and he coughed up a mouthful of black-red poisonous blood, falling weakly to his knees. Seeing Megumi Fushiguro's poor condition, Yoshino Junpei and Yuji Itadori immediately rushed forward to stand in front of him and protect him. Fortunately, Megumi Fushiguro's Shikigami had high autonomy, and could still be of some use even when its master was in a bad state. Kyongi pounced directly on the cursed spirit, and opened its bloody maw to bite its throat. Purple blood erupted from the cursed spirit's entire body, and countless blood droplets appeared around Kyongi, instantly riddling it like raindrops. The severely damaged Shikigami turned back into a shadow, and returned to Megumi Fushiguro's shadow. Megumi Fushiguro, kneeling on the ground in pain, also sensed the return of the Shikigami. He activated his curse technique again to summon Round Deer, using its curse technique to slowly heal his injuries and neutralize the cursed spirit's curse toxin. By the time the cursed spirit rose again, the flesh on its body was uncontrollably dissolving and dripping away in chunks, and white bones gradually appeared before everyone. The corrosion technique was truly terrifying. Seeing that the battle was almost over, Kagura-shin jumped down from the command block to speed up the process. After all, judging by the current situation, the cursed spirit would be completely dissolved by the corrosion technique in less than 5 minutes. Domain Expansion, Genesis. Although Kagura-shin was very confident in his own strength, he knew that being steady would never be wrong, so he still expanded his domain to fight. Maximum Technique, Beyond the World. A trident emitting a rainbow-colored glow appeared in Kagura-shin's hand. This trident didn't have any flashy functions, it only had the property of reverse curse technique positive output. Exorcism Trident. Whoosh, boom. The moment the trident struck the cursed spirit, it exploded with powerful positive cursed energy that directly neutralized the cursed spirit, revealing its core, a pitch-black, denture-like cursed object. At the same time, the overflowing positive cursed energy also completely cleared the cursed toxin and injuries from Megumi Fushigiro's body, restoring his physical state to its peak. Kagura-shin picked up the dentures and tossed them in his hand. I thought it was another one of Ryaman Sukuna's fingers causing trouble, but I guess not. What a pity. Ryaman Sukuna's mouth appeared directly on Yuji Itadori's cheek and said disdainfully. Humph, how could a soul fragment of this great me be so weak? Even a soul fragment from just one finger could handle these three brats. After hearing this, Kagura-shin recalled the special grade cursed spirit under the Yasuhachi bridge, and a large slowly appeared over his head. In your dreams, if I hadn't actually fought it, I might have believed you. Although Kagura-shin was constantly bad-mouthing him in his heart, he only smiled without saying a word on the surface, giving the king of curses some face. For that kind of trash special grade with only one finger as a power source, Kagura-shin could only say that except for Yoshino Junpei, who might not be able to handle it, Megumi Fushiguro and Yuji Itadori could both win in a one-on-one. Of course, a large part of the reason was that the cursed spirit's domain ability was too poor. Hashtag 52 Chapter 52 Ownership of the Cursed Object. Chapter 52 Ownership of the Cursed Object. Kagura-shin casually stuffed the cursed object into his pants pocket, as he did not want to reveal the shulker box in front of Ryaman Sukuna. After all, 7 of Ryaman Sukuna's fingers were still inside it. After the group returned to Jujutsu High, they completed a joint mission report and submitted it. Less than half a day after submission, the Jujutsu Higher UPS issued an order for Kagura-shin to hand over the cursed object. Thinking about how unreliable the Jujutsu Higher UPS were, Kagura-shin was actually unwilling to hand over the cursed object. In his mind, the danger level of this denture-like cursed object was even higher than that of Ryaman Sukuna. Its curse technique, which could devour and assimilate everything, was already slightly stronger than Geto Sugura's maximum technique, with just a standard curse technique reversal. Maximum technique. Uzumaki could only extract the cursed technique of a cursed spirit, and the extracted technique would not see any further improvement. However, that cursed spirit could even unleash power surpassing the original owner, after assimilating the opponent's curse technique. Its growth potential was simply too high. If that cursed spirit were allowed to take a bite out of Maharaga, and given time to develop, it was estimated that no one in the world would be able to exorcise it. He was afraid that someone among the higher UPS was colluding with Kenjaku. If this cursed object fell into Kenjaku's hands, it would be quite troublesome. Kagura-shin casually threw his phone aside and touched the command block placed in the room. Don't let me down. He took out 3 cursed objects of various appearances from the shulker box and used a command on them, /combine these 3 cursed objects, change their form and aura, but destroy all of their curse techniques. After consuming over 30 levels of experience points, the 3 cursed objects finally formed into the shape of dentures, while also emitting an aura that surpassed a typical special grade cursed object. This is finished. Even if this thing is stolen by Kenjaku and successfully incarnated, it won't have any effect. However, Kagura-shin estimated that it would be impossible for it to successfully incarnate. After all, although it looked perfectly fine on the surface, it had actually incorporated 3 different types of cursed energy inside. Aside from Itadori Yuji, who had a special constitution, it was likely impossible for anyone else to survive after eating it. Soon, the higher UPS dispatched an assistant supervisor to Jujutsu High to collect the cursed object. Kagura-shin expressionlessly shoved the cursed object into his hand, and then turned to leave. Itadori Yuji, Fushiguro Megumi, and Yoshino Junpei, who were beside him, thought he was angry because of the higher UPS lack of trust in him, but in reality, Kagura-shin was afraid he wouldn't be able to stop himself from laughing, which would give the game away. Ho ho ho. At night, the assistant supervisor drove along the mountain road to deliver the cursed object to the location designated by the higher UPS. The cursed object had been simply sealed, and was placed casually on the passenger seat. The assistant supervisor would occasionally glance at it to confirm its safety, but suddenly, a large truck roared past with its high beams on, dazzling his eyes. When he opened his eyes again, he caught a glimpse out of the corner of his eye of a humanoid cursed spirit covered in stitches sitting in the passenger seat, holding the box sealing the cursed object. Terrified, he slammed on the brakes to stop the car. Before he could even bring the car to a full stop, Mahito's palm had already gently patted his back. "Oh my, you look very nervous. Don't be afraid, because no matter how afraid you are, it's useless." Bang! The assistant supervisor's body suddenly swelled and then burst into a pile of blood mist, coating the entire interior of the car. Mahito then took the box and walked away openly. It wasn't until a car behind was blocked by this vehicle and unable to move that someone discovered the tragedy. Screams and police sirens echoed throughout the mountain road. The eerie scene of the car containing only bloodstains but no corpse left the police baffled, and eventually, under pressure from the Jujutsu world, the case was closed hastily. After returning to Dagon's domain, Mahito threw the cursed object in his hand directly to Kenjaku. "Can the cursed spirit born from this cursed object really become our asset? You value it so much." Kenjaku stroked the cursed object in his hand and grinned. "That cursed spirit will only be stronger than you imagine, Mahito." He casually shoved the cursed object into the mouth of a tied-up curse user, but after a violent distortion, the curse user's body exploded with a bang. Mahito asked in confusion, "Did it fail?" But shouldn't a failed incarnation result in the body distorting and dissolving? What's going on with this explosion? Kenjaku picked up the cursed object that had fallen to the ground, wiped the blood off it, and said indifferently, "Maybe it's a rather special cursed object. Just like how Ryaman Sukuna's fingers are selective about their vessel, I guess this one is the same. It seems we'll need to capture more curse users to try it out." Kagura-shin, I was wondering why I couldn't find any curse users for experiments. It turns out it's because you old geezer beat me to it and used up all my test subjects. Chapter 53, Barrier Expansion. By the time Kagura-shin received news of the missing cursed object, it was already the next morning. Along with the news came an investigation order issued by the higher UPS. The investigation order wasn't just sent to him. Everyone who had seen him hand over the cursed object to the assistant supervisor yesterday received one. They were also ordered not to leave Jujutsu High without permission. Upon learning the news, Gojo Satoru immediately called Kagura-shin to give him some instructions. "Don't pay them any mind. As for the investigation order, just use it to wipe your ass. Tell Yuji and the others too, whatever those higher UPS say should just go in one ear and out the other. I'll be back in Tokyo in 3 or 4 days. I'll handle this little matter for you then." Hanging up the phone, Kagura-shin looked up helplessly at the 3 people in front of him and said, "You heard him. That's what Gojo-sensei said. With Gojo-sensei keeping the higher UPS in check, they won't actually dare to do anything to us." Itadori Yuji curled his lip helplessly, while Megumi Fushiguro and Yoshino Junpei sighed and slumped onto the table, exhausted. The feeling of being suspected made all 4 of them very unhappy, but they had to give the higher UPS some face until Gojo Satoru returned, so they could only accept it with resignation. As for Kenjaku, who had snatched the cursed object, he had already tested that cursed object on 5 or 6 curse users, but without exception, every curse user exploded into a pile of minced meat. He even tried stuffing the cursed object into the special-grade curse spirits stored within his curse technique, but that also ended in failure. However, the more it failed, the more he felt this cursed object was special. But since he lacked a suitable vessel, he could only temporarily give up on continuing the incarnation process for this cursed object. "Mahito, you've already learned domain expansion and domain amplification, right? I have a mission for you. But remember, even if you have to abandon the mission, do not die. We can't afford the death of any more companions." That was a lie. Kenjaku didn't consider them companions at all. He was merely afraid that if Mahito died outside, he wouldn't be able to absorb Mahito's curse technique, which would affect his plans. Oh, this mission looks a bit difficult. Do I have to capture this many ordinary people? Such a big move will definitely be noticed by those annoying jujutsu sorcerers. The mission targets aren't ordinary people. They are all humans who possess cursed techniques, but lack the corresponding circuits in their brains. In other words, they all have the talent to become jujutsu sorcerers. But well, when humans suddenly discover they possess great power, will they really use it for good? I'm curious to see how chaotic human society will become when a group with special powers suddenly appears. And with such a large number of new jujutsu sorcerers, even those people in the jujutsu world won't be able to handle it quickly. Furthermore, Kenjaku had bribed several news agencies. As soon as a violent incident caused by a new jujutsu sorcerer occurred, these agencies would publicize it extensively, making it impossible for the jujutsu world to suppress the news. Ultimately, it would plunge society into panic. The cursed energy generated by the fear of hundreds of thousands, or even millions of humans, should be just enough to activate the barrier. During the 3 short days while the group at Jujutsu High were confined and Gojo Satoru was out of the country, about 100 jujutsu sorcerers suddenly cropped up in the Tokyo area like mushrooms after rain. Although the higher UPS immediately ordered their tracking and containment, due to the sheer number, some still abused their power, resulting in over a dozen violent cases. Including but not limited to a pitiful office worker, bullied by their boss and colleagues, snapped and used a curse technique to commit a random massacre within the company. Delinquent high school students misused cursed techniques, causing a school building to collapse. Using cursed techniques to rob banks, theft, and so on. Several news agencies disregarded costs to publish relevant newspapers on a massive scale. Some newspapers that originally required payment even became free items, quickly spreading the news across the country. At this point, even the government could no longer cover it up, and had to resort to various lies for concealment. An unknown serial killer broke into the company. The collapse of the school building was a quality issue, and those responsible have been held accountable. The bank robberies and thefts are just ordinary crimes, supernatural powers absolutely do not exist. The public might believe 1 or 2 explanations, but when the number of incidents reached a certain level, some people were bound to believe the truth. For a time, all of Japan was in a state of anxiety, and a massive amount of negative emotion filled the entire nation. Kenjaku was standing on a tall building in Tokyo, placing a cursed object at that location. Alright, this is the last one. Now, let the game begin. As Kenjaku injected his cursed energy, the cursed objects he had placed all over Tokyo were activated. A massive barrier capable of covering the entirety of Tokyo expanded instantly. The powerful suction could even reach across all of Japan, drawing cursed energy from the entire country toward Tokyo to serve as fuel for the barrier. Similarly, due to the influence of cursed energy on electronic devices, all electronics in Tokyo turned into piles of scrap metal at that moment. Tokyo was cut off from the outside world. Hashtag 54 Chapter 54 Incident. Chapter 54 Incident. After the barrier enveloped Tokyo, the ordinary people of Tokyo all looked up at the sky, which had become somewhat dim due to the barrier. What happened? The sky suddenly went dark. Is it going to rain? Why does my phone have no signal? What is that? A monster. As the barrier descended, the forms of thousands of cursed spirits appeared before everyone. These cursed spirits were all low-level ones released by Kenjaku from cursed spirit manipulation. These cursed spirits mixed into the crowd, causing severe panic. For a time, the barrier was filled with a large amount of chaotic cursed energy. Red Dragon. No, Fushiguro, do you even know how to play? You're playing a red dragon? Self-draw, I win. Everyone, give me some push-ups. Kagurashin pushed the mahjong tiles in front of him, laughing wildly as he made the other 3 get down and do push-ups. Afterward, he picked up his phone, intending to record a video of the three of them to post in the Jujutsu High chat group, but suddenly discovered his phone had no signal. What's wrong? Is the phone broken? Tap, tap, tap. Kagura-shin grabbed the phone and tapped it hard on the table a few times, but there was still no response, which made him scratch his head involuntarily. The other three finished their push-ups and also tried to send messages in the group, but there was no response either. Fushiguro Megumi was the first to notice the problem. He immediately sensed that this situation looked like the signs of electronic devices being interfered with by cursed energy. He immediately told the other three about this situation. Kagura-shin frowned and thought for a moment before saying, "That's not right. Jujutsu High is covered by Master Tengen's barrier. A barrier released by someone with a lower mastery of barrier techniques than Master Tengen shouldn't possibly affect the interior of Jujutsu High. And I find it hard to imagine how large a barrier would need to be to cover Jujutsu High's barrier unless that guy Kenjaku made a move. But the timing is off. Shouldn't he take care of Gojo-sensei first before launching his operation?" The four of them immediately headed to Yaga Mazumichi's office. At this moment, Yaga Mazumichi was tightly clutching a slip of paper, and Mei-Mei's crow was standing on his window frame, preening its pitch-black feathers. Yaga Mazumichi looked up at the four who had barged into the office. He didn't have time to argue with them and simply handed the paper to the four of them. A barrier that can completely cover Tokyo has appeared above the city. But both ordinary people and jujutsu sorcerers can enter and exit the barrier without any obstruction. However, tens of thousands of low-level cursed spirits have appeared within the barrier. They all tightly follow the crowds. Under normal circumstances, they do not attack humans, but when people want to leave the barrier, they drive them back. Currently, fewer than 1,000 people have managed to avoid the cursed spirits and leave the barrier. It is still unknown what this group of cursed spirits wants to do. Jujutsu sorcerers cannot guarantee exorcism without being discovered by ordinary people, and the higher UPS have ordered jujutsu sorcerers to stand by for now. After reading it, Kagura-shin returned the note to Yaga Mazumichi and asked, "So we're just going to do nothing and act like turtles here?" Yaga Mazumichi nodded and replied, "For now, that's the case. And since you are still in the probation period, even if there were an operation, you would likely be excluded." Speechless. Meanwhile, the plane Gojo Satoru was on, flying to Tokyo, was forced to land in another area because the Tokyo control tower could not send messages. After getting off the plane, he immediately rushed to the edge of the barrier and reached out to touch it. Zzz. As soon as Gojo Satoru's finger touched the barrier, it was shocked back by a bolt of black-purple electricity. "Oh?" He glanced at the crowd of ordinary people in the distance who were also curious about the barrier, surrounding it, and constantly jumping back and forth inside and outside the barrier. Ordinary people can see it too. That means the person who set up the barrier specifically enhanced the visual effects. Is it to make ordinary people panic? But they can enter and exit the barrier without any obstruction, yet I was repelled. Could it be that a related binding vow was set? That's right, Kenjaku had set a binding vow on the barrier. Everyone except Gojo Satoru can freely enter and exit the barrier. If it were the original plot, Gojo Satoru would have attacked this barrier with full force, and even with hundreds of thousands to 1,000,000 ordinary people providing cursed energy to operate the barrier, this barrier would have held Gojo Satoru for at most 2 hours. But now there is one more top-tier combatant in this world. Kagura-shin. He alone greatly increased the strength of the binding vow, directly raising the hardness of this barrier by several levels, making it feel very troublesome even for Gojo Satoru. He also discovered the problem with this barrier, but even knowing it, there was no way around it. If he couldn't get in, he couldn't get in. Trying to isolate me outside. Although I'm not entirely sure who you are, nor do I know your objective won't be achieved. You're also underestimating Shin's strength too much. Since he couldn't get in, Gojo Satoru didn't launch any more unnecessary attacks. He quickly teleported around the perimeter of the barrier, wanting to find a few jujutsu sorcerers or assistant supervisors to relay a message. Suddenly, he looked up and saw a pitch-black crow emitting waves of cursed energy. He immediately waved his hand to get the crow to notice him. "Mei, if you can hear me, make the crow nod." The crow that flew into Gojo Satoru's hand nodded, its eyes looking at him intelligently, waiting for him to continue speaking. "I can't get into the barrier for the time being. You go find Kagura Shin, and tell him he can act according to his own ideas. I'll take responsibility for anything that happens. That's all for now. Let this crow stay with me for the time being to relay messages." Chapter 55, Jujutsu High is under attack again, Sigh. Kagura Shin, who was lying around bored at Jujutsu High, was suddenly called to the office by Yaga Mazamichi. "Shin, that guy Gojo had Mei bring you a message. He said you can act according to your own will, and he will take responsibility for any consequences. So from now on, whether you want to stay at Jujutsu High or leave and wreak havoc, it's up to you." Yaga Mazamichi naturally couldn't stand the higher UPS, wait-and-see, turtle-like behavior. They were old, their thinking had become conservative, and they only sought to prevent the situation from worsening without actually thinking about how to solve it. While he wanted to resolve things, he felt powerless. Yaga Mazamichi also revealed some information to Kagura Shin. Right now, about a quarter of the jujutsu sorcerers in Tokyo are already secretly exorcising cursed spirits, including grade 1 jujutsu sorcerers like Nanami Kento and Mei. Kagura Shin rolled his eyes, feeling somewhat speechless. Why does it feel like jujutsu sorcerers are committing a crime by exorcising cursed spirits, having to do it secretly? As expected, as long as that group of old higher UPS keeps occupying the power of the jujutsu world, jujutsu sorcerers will never see a future. After greeting Fushiguro Megumi and the others, he left Jujutsu High, casually took an assistant supervisor's car, and arrived in Roppongi. Roppongi, which should have been crowded with people, was now empty, with only 1 or 2 grade 3 or 4 cursed spirits wandering the streets. Kagura Shin looked up at the sky, which had become somewhat gloomy due to the barrier covering it, and immediately saw a mass of cursed energy floating in the center of the barrier. The size of the cursed energy mass was immense, and the light it emitted was dazzling. Even compared to a barrier that could cover all of Tokyo, it was eye-catching enough. Is it really okay for the higher UPS to just leave this thing alone? If someone threw a cursed object into this level of cursed energy to catalyze it, a special grade cursed spirit could be born. This was a mass of cursed energy formed by the negative emotions of all of Japan, attracted and condensed by the barrier. Right now, it was just serving as the energy source to maintain the barrier. It was unknown where it would be used once this barrier was no longer needed. He casually threw 2 TNTs, blowing up the cursed spirits on the street, and then strolled around Roppongi. The compass he held in his hand, which could track Kenjaku, was still spinning in circles. He's certainly cautious. Well, there's nothing I can do about that. Kagura Shin had to settle for the next best thing, choosing to let the compass find the nearest special grade cursed spirit. At this moment, Kenjaku was indeed inside the barrier. Through information relayed by cursed spirits, he learned that Kagura Shin had already left Jujutsu High. He immediately rushed toward Jujutsu High, followed by a giant ape cursed spirit, which carried a humanoid object on its back covered in sealing talismans like a mummy. Without electronic devices, how will you know that Jujutsu High is under attack? Kagura Shin. By the time you return to Jujutsu High, my plan will already be half successful. So what if you're strong? Gojo Satoru is also strong, but as long as I hide in the shadows, you can't do anything to me. Kenjaku was playing on the information gap. He had eyes within the higher UPS of the Jujutsu world, and all the cursed spirits on the streets were his informants. He could know Kagura Shin's location at any time and hide, while Kagura Shin could only trail behind and eat his dust. However, he still instinctively sped up, quickly arriving outside the barrier of Jujutsu High. He couldn't be bothered to infiltrate. There was no one at Jujutsu High right now who could stop him, as long as he acted quickly to resolve everything. The barrier of Jujutsu High had no defensive capabilities, it could only identify unregistered cursed energy and sound an alarm. The alarm did indeed sound, but Jujutsu High only had 4 combatants left: Yaga Mazamichi, Fushiguro Megumi, Itadori Yuji, and Yoshino Junpei, along with 1 healer, Yeri Shoko. Everyone else with combat capabilities had been pulled out and spread across various areas of Tokyo for safety maintenance. The 3 first years were not allowed to leave Jujutsu High. Yaga Mazamichi kicked open the office door and looked toward the student dormitory. An attacker. The target is the student dormitory. Oh no. As Yaga Mazamichi's cursed energy surged, a large number of dolls in the office all came to life as if imbued with vitality. A pink pig-shaped doll suddenly expanded in size, nudged Yaga Mazamichi onto its back, and then galloped off toward the student dormitory. Yaga Mazamichi, it's not a pig, it's Elephant-chan. Boom. The 3 who had been drawn out by the alarm had only just left the dormitory and ran a few steps when they came face to face with Kenjaku. However, Kenjaku was currently completely shrouded in a black robe, which was covered in numerous barrier techniques to prevent detection by Kagura Shin, and also to prevent others from recognizing this body. Although Itadori Yuji had seen his face last time, Gojo Satoru could at best only guess that this body was Geto Sugiru's, but could not confirm it. However, if Yaga Mazamichi were to see it, things would be difficult to handle. Kenjaku didn't waste any words and immediately activated his cursed technique. Anti-gravity system. Hashtag 56 Chapter 56 2 against 1. Chapter 56, 2 against 1. Kenjaku directly used the anti-gravity system to lift the 3 Jujutsu High students off the ground, simultaneously activating blood manipulation. Blood manipulation, Crimson Bind. 3 ribbons of blood, like agile serpents, coiled toward the 3, who had no leverage in midair. Fushiguro Megumi immediately summoned Nu, which grabbed Itadori Yuji and Yoshino Junpei with its talons, while he himself was carried in its beak as they dodged backward. After moving a certain distance away from Kenjaku, gravity suddenly reasserted itself. Nu was pulled slightly downward by the sudden weight, but quickly adjusted its posture to set the 3 down safely on the ground. Elephant. The moment Fushiguro Megumi landed, he summoned Elephant. A massive torrent of water shot from its trunk, instantly dispersing the 3 Crimson Bind attacks. At the same time, Itadori Yuji and Yoshino Junpei launched their own attacks at Kenjaku. Blood manipulation, Cleave anesthetic cannon. Kenjaku fired 2 cleave attacks in response, which collided with their attacks in midair. Oh, it seems I underestimated you. Well then, I suppose I should get a little serious. Domain expansion, womb perfusion. Boom. A massive pillar-like stone rose from the ground. Its exterior looked like a giant tree composed of twisted faces and contorted bodies. Just looking at it was enough to make one's skin crawl. The vast range of this open barrier domain undoubtedly engulfed all 3 Jujutsu High students, while Yaga Mazamichi, who was rushing to the scene, was forced to a stop at the very edge of the domain. Although he knew how to use Simple Domain, a technique capable of temporarily countering a domain expansion, it was merely a desperate measure to be used when trapped within an enemy's domain. While his Simple Domain could move, it required both hands to form the necessary hand seals. Having lost both his cursed corpses and his hands, he would only be a burden if he entered the domain, with no impact on the battle. The situation has become quite serious. But electronic devices are useless, and I can't contact anyone for the time being. What should I do now? Meanwhile, inside the domain, Itadori Yuji and the others were pinned firmly to the ground by an invisible force of gravity, finding it extremely difficult even to lift their heads. Rivulets of blood seeped from their noses, ears, and eyes. They looked absolutely wretched. Author's note: womb perfusion can be imbued with the effect of any one curse technique that Kenjaku has mastered, but only one at a time. Fushiguro Megumi and Itadori Yuji both knew that they had no other options left except to manifest their own domains. Although they knew the method for domain expansion and had systematically studied barrier techniques, they had yet to successfully manifest a domain. However, the current situation left them no time to deliberate, and they poured their cursed energy outward frantically. I don't care about the appearance. Whether the range is big or small, just manifest already. Fushiguro Megumi used all his strength to clasp his hands together, interlocking his fingers. Domain expansion, Chimera Shadow Garden. Itadori Yuji formed the Xidagarba Madra. Domain expansion, followers of the pier. Of course, Itadori Yuji's domain effect is different from the original work. The liquid-like shadows emerging from beneath Fushiguro Megumi, and the scarlet blood beneath Itadori Yuji instantly covered a large area of the ground, occupying their own sides like the black and white of a taiji symbol. However, because Itadori Yuji had more abundant cursed energy, his domain was much more complete than Fushiguro Megumi's. After claiming their sides, they expanded toward Kenjaku, quickly engulfing it as well. The shell of the domain gradually emerged, but it was merely a symbolic covering, like an umbrella with only its ribs and no canopy. 9 figures of varying shapes gradually emerged from the pool of blood beneath their feet. They were the cursed womb, death paintings. Similarly, Fushiguro Megumi's various cursed spirits leaped out from the shadows one after another, eyeing Kenjaku fiercely. Choso helped Itadori Yuji up from the ground, and gently wiped the blood from his face. All right, leave the rest to your big brothers. Before we die, we won't let anyone bully you. Big brother. Seeing the two manifest such half-finished domains, Kenjaku felt a hint of disdain. You don't actually think you can defeat me with such ragged domains, do you? Choso looked back at Kenjaku, who was shrouded in black robes, and replied, how will we know if we can win unless we try? Blood manipulation, cleave maximum technique, Wing King. The cursed womb, death paintings launched their attacks at Kenjaku one after another. Furthermore, because they were still within Itadori Yuji's curse technique, Kenjaku had no way to dodge their attacks. Similarly, Fushiguro Megumi also manipulated his Shikigami to attack. Kenjaku instantly adjusted its cursed energy output to the maximum, and the powerful gravity directly crushed Itadori Yuji's domain, which was as slender as umbrella ribs. An open barrier domain can directly destroy a closed barrier domain from the outside. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to call it a counter-relationship. It is basically impossible for a closed barrier domain to defeat an open barrier domain. Clearly, Fushiguro Megumi and Itadori Yuji's domains were no exception. Even working together, they could only hold out for a short while. Crack! Hearing the sound of the domain shattering, Itadori Yuji increased his cursed energy output to maintain the domain, because he knew that once the domain broke, they would have no power left to fight back. Fushiguro Megumi also did his utmost to use his domain to contend with Kenjaku. Now he and Itadori Yuji were unable to participate in the battle at all and could only rely on the cursed womb, death paintings, the Shikigami, and the heavily injured Yoshino Junpei to launch attacks at Kenjaku. An overwhelming barrage of various attacks surged toward Kenjaku as if to submerge it. The fact that it hadn't instantly shattered their domains caused Kenjaku to frown. Did I underestimate you? To think first-year students would actually have some skill. Chapter 57, New Body. Anti-Gravity System, Chaos. The gorilla cursed spirit behind Kenjaku threw the mummy it was carrying onto the ground, shielding Kenjaku with its body, and turned to ash under a barrage of attacks. Crack. More cracks appeared on the outer shell of Itadori Yuji's domain, and the shadows churning at Fushiguro Megumi's feet surged more violently. Anti-gravity system, gravitational downpour. Crack, crack, crack. The gravity on the ground where everyone stood was erased by Kenjaku's cursed technique. Dense cracks appeared across a large area, which then shattered into pieces that floated into the air, only to be violently pulled downward by even greater gravity. Massive amounts of concrete and brick rained down upon Fushiguro Megumi and Itadori Yuji. Chunu rushed out from the shadows at Fushiguro Megumi's feet, spreading their wings to release lightning that shattered all the debris in the air. Kechizu expanded his Wing King, covering Yuji beneath him, and used his Wing King and his own back to block all the falling objects. Choso's piercing blood had finished charging, and a bolt of blood traveling well beyond the speed of sound whistled toward Kenjaku's head. Kenjaku frowned again, raising 2 fingers slightly. I didn't expect that I'd have to place a binding vow on myself just to deal with you all. Boom. The range of Kenjaku's open barrier domain instantly shrank by half, but the density of cursed energy within the domain more than doubled. This was the power of a binding vow. By making a small sacrifice, one could gain an incredibly high return. The domains of Fushiguro Megumi and Itadori Yuji were instantly crushed, and the various Shikigami and the figures of the cursed womb, death painting were scattered. The piercing blood in the air was neutralized by Kenjaku's high-density domain. By the time it was about to hit Kenjaku, its power was already negligible, and Kenjaku grabbed it with a hand covered in thick cursed energy, crushing it. Fushiguro Megumi, Itadori Yuji, and Yoshino Junpei were pinned to the ground by gravity again. This time, the gravity was even more extreme. The bones throughout their bodies cracked under the pressure. If Kenjaku had applied even a little more force, the three of them would have been reduced to pools of flesh and blood on the ground. It tore off the seal talisman from the mummy on the ground behind it, revealing a naked, humanoid biological body inside. It appeared to be an adult male, but it had 4 arms, 2 pairs of closed eyes on its face, and another mouth on its abdomen. Alright, Sukuna, this is the new body prepared for you. Inside this brat's body, even you would find it difficult to seize control, right? Itadori Yuji's purpose was merely to allow Ryomen Sukuna's consciousness to awaken. After all, the unconscious cursed object of Ryomen Sukuna was a lethal poison that an ordinary person could not withstand. Basically, eating it would result in immediate death. However, once Sukuna possessed self-awareness, he could control his own power to change bodies at will. Another barely functional purpose was to allow Tokyo Jujutsu High to safely hand over the collected Sukuna's finger to Itadori Yuji for consumption. However, the sudden appearance of Kagura Shin, who was not in the plan, severely undermined this role. All the fingers collected by Tokyo Jujutsu High ended up in his pocket. Now that Itadori Yuji had completed his task, he could be discarded. Sukuna, inside Itadori Yuji, manifested a mouth directly on Itadori's cheek. Humph, this brat's soul is strange. I can't transfer my power right now. Kenjaku pulled the bottle of cursed toxin from its pocket and forced it into the mouth of the helpless Itadori Yuji, pouring the cursed toxin down his throat. The cursed toxin, capable of suppressing the soul, immediately caused Itadori Yuji's consciousness to blur, and black cursed markings gradually appeared on his face. When he opened his eyes again, the body was already being controlled by Ryomen Sukuna. Itadori Yuji's soul returned once again to that meadow filled with a warm atmosphere. Ryomen Sukuna didn't even want to use reverse cursed technique to heal Itadori Yuji. He stood up directly and thrust his hand into the new body Kenjaku had prepared. Ryomen Sukuna's soul and cursed energy poured rapidly into the new body. The 2 pairs of eyes on the face of the new body suddenly opened, while Itadori Yuji's body collapsed powerlessly to the ground. Hee ha 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 ha. This new body is not bad. Although there is still a big gap compared to my former body, it is much more convenient to use than this brat's body. Jujutsu Sorcerer, you are truly an eyesore. Ryomen Sukuna raised his hand and unleashed countless slashes, cutting the 3 people lying on the ground into pieces. Kenjaku dispelled its domain, watching this scene with a helpless shrug. However, the state of the 3 being in pieces did not last long. The command block in Kagura Shin's dormitory emitted a faint glow, and the broken bodies of the 3 instantly turned into white particles that dissipated into the air, only to reappear in front of Ryomen Sukuna and Kenjaku at full health. Meanwhile, far away in Ginza, Kagura Shin, who was using a wooden stick enchanted with knockback 100 to play baseball with a special grade cursed spirit, suddenly saw his experience points drop by 20 or 30 levels and a series of appeared above his head. Oh no, Yuji and the others are in trouble. With one strike, he shattered the special grade cursed spirit that was rushing at him again into a mist of blood, then took out a portal block, built it in front of him, and prepared to teleport back to Tokyo Jujutsu High. Meanwhile, back at the school, Kenjaku's expression turned serious, while the smile on Ryomen Sukuna's face grew even wider. You can even do something like this. I'm becoming increasingly interested in your body. Hashtag 58 Chapter 58 Barrier Shattered. Chapter 58 Barrier Shattered. Kenjaku sensed something was wrong when he saw the three revive, and immediately wanted to withdraw from Jujutsu High with Ryaman Sukuna. Let's withdraw first. Kagura Shin's curse technique is strange. Withdraw. Who wants to withdraw? Me? Kenjaku, do you think I would lose to that brat? Kenjaku naturally believed in his heart that Ryaman Sukuna would lose. After all, he only had the power of 7 fingers, and he was facing Kagura Shin's guaranteed death trap. However, outwardly, he remained calm and replied, "Of course not, it's just that we have something more important to do now. You haven't forgotten the binding vow from 1,000 years ago, have you? If you break the binding vow, you'll surely feel terrible, right? TCH, then let's go." The two's loud plotting was naturally heard by the three from Jujutsu High, and they certainly wouldn't let Kenjaku and Sukuna leave comfortably. Domain expansion, *2. Megumi Fushiguro and Yuji Itadori's domain expansion activated again, covering Sukuna and Kenjaku. Ryaman Sukuna squinted his eyes, glanced at their tattered domains, and disdainfully raised his hand. Open. A fiercely burning flame long arrow gradually emerged from Sukuna's hand. The scorching temperature of the flame arrow was unbearable for the three from Jujutsu High, even after being neutralized by Yuji Itadori and Megumi Fushiguro's domains. Boom. The flames from open erupted. From a distance, it looked like a massive flame tornado sweeping through the entire Jujutsu High dormitory, instantly swallowing the three. The incomplete domains were instantly shattered by this blow. To be able to directly shatter to people's domains with just the effect of a cursed technique, is it any wonder he is the king of curses from 1,000 years ago? Even the claim by Kenjaku that Jogo's strength was equivalent to 7 or 8 fingers of Ryaman Sukuna was just a lie made up to comfort Jogo's fragile little heart. Domain expansion, Genesis. Kagura Shin had just finished building the portal and teleported to the Jujutsu High dormitory. Oh, the dormitory had already been blasted into a large crater by one open from Ryaman Sukuna, leaving only the portal frame that was originally in Kagura Shin's room, and a command block floating lonely in midair. As soon as Kagura Shin popped out of the portal, he immediately expanded his domain expansion without hesitation. But unfortunately, there was no one else in the domain except for 3 scorched bodies that were dissipating into white particle effects. Ran away again. It must be said, he is worthy of being a 1,000-year-old schemer. If they didn't run fast, they wouldn't have lived for so many years. Itadori and the others revived again. As soon as they regained consciousness, they were about to expand their domains again, but upon closer inspection, they found Kagura Shin standing not far away, and they breathed a sigh of relief, and lay directly in Kagura Shin's domain. Kagura Shin dispelled the domain, took a look at the big crater behind him, and was speechless for a moment. The dormitory is gone. Where will we sleep in the future? Do I really have to transform into Steve and start infrastructure construction at Jujutsu High? Yuji Itadori scratched his head and said, "It seems so now. Then I'll have to trouble you, Shin. Of course, we will help too." Masamichi Yaga arrived at the side of the 4 on his doll at this time. "I will contact the members of Window in a while, and have them come over to rebuild a dormitory. However, it is estimated that it will not be completed within half a year. You can only live outside or pitch a tent in Jujutsu High to make do." Kagura Shin imagined his miserable appearance living in a tent on a stormy day, trying to hold onto the tent to keep it from being blown away by the wind, and immediately shook his head wildly. "I'd better build one myself. I can get it done quickly. Anyway, as long as the construction is done around the command block, it won't disappear even if he leaves." Ryaman Sukuna and Kenjaku separated immediately after leaving Jujutsu High. Ryaman Sukuna wanted to collect his soul fragments scattered in various places by himself. Although he could only sense the location of 6 fingers now, it was good to be able to retrieve 6. Kenjaku stayed in the domain, continuing his remaining plans. He was not afraid of Sukuna violating the agreement at all. The power of binding vow is unimaginable to ordinary people. Even the king of curses must obediently fulfill the binding vow of that year. Heh heh. The cursed energy has been collected enough. It's time to take it a step further. Kenjaku took out an exquisite small box from his bosom and opened it, revealing a cursed womb inside that looked like a small whirlwind. A cursed spirit born from human fear of meteorological disasters. If it can establish a connection with the cursed energy collected this time, then it should fuse some interesting things. For example, the cursed energy generated by this fear in the future will also become the source of its power. Kenjaku threw the cursed womb directly into the cursed energy group in the sky, and then saw the cursed womb crazily absorbing this group of cursed energy, and the size of the cursed womb expanded and matured rapidly. Kenjaku couldn't suppress the corners of his mouth. After it matured to a certain extent, he immediately recovered it, left a little cursed energy to maintain the barrier, and disappeared from this barrier. Satoru Gojo outside the barrier quickly discovered the anomaly of the barrier with his 6 eyes. Before the barrier could absorb enough cursed energy again, he immediately launched an attack on it. 9 ropes, polarized light, crow and declaration, between front and back, hollow technique, purple. The power of the hollow technique with the incantation was far beyond the normal state. The purple with maximum cursed energy output collided with the barrier. After a huge sound, purple directly shattered the barrier into slag. Chapter 59, Repairing the Dormitory. Hollow purple continued flying into the sky, even punching a huge hole through the clouds. Fortunately, ordinary people couldn't see hollow purple. They only saw the barrier in front of them suddenly shatter for some unknown reason, allowing everyone to see the inside again. Similarly, the barrier's function of making cursed spirits visible also failed directly. The cursed spirits that were originally in the view of many ordinary people within the barrier seemed to have suddenly disappeared, but in reality, they were just no longer visible. Gojo Satoru floated in midair, activating his 6 eyes at full power, constantly scanning the Tokyo area below, hoping to find some trace of abnormal cursed energy, but found nothing except for low-level cursed spirits everywhere. When he slowly flew back to Jujutsu High, he discovered that there was a huge hole in the school's barrier, and where the dormitory building used to be, there was now only a crater resembling a meteorite impact. Kagura-shin was starting from the edge, filling in the crater bit by bit, while Itadori Yuji asked from the side. Is it enough to just lay 1 layer? Without anything underneath to support these blocks, won't they really fall down? Kagura-shin said while laying the ground with gold blocks. Don't worry, even if all the surrounding ground sinks into the underground, the blocks I lay will still float in midair. That's the characteristic of my curse technique, Yuji. Meanwhile, Fushiguro Megumi, Yoshino Junpei, and Masamichi Yaga were using efficiency enchanted diamond pickaxes to trim the ground around the crater, ensuring that the final surface would be relatively uniform. Gojo Satoru slowly descended onto the golden ground that Kagura-shin had laid and said. Although it's a creation of your curse technique, if Meimei saw you using so much gold to pave the ground, she would definitely go crazy. Ah. You're back. Gojo-sensei. Itadori Yuji greeted him happily. Gojo-sensei, Ryaman Sukuna has already left my body, so my suspended death sentence should be useless now, right? Gojo Satoru suddenly said with a strange expression. Ah. That's a big problem, Yuji. Don't forget that you are still the incarnation for the cursed womb, death painting. At the time, I helped you secure a suspended death sentence because you could absorb more Sukuna's finger, and were still somewhat useful. Now that you've not only lost Sukuna's finger but are also useless, I estimate the suspended death sentence will turn into immediate execution. Hearing this, Itadori Yuji's face immediately became tense. This isn't right, is it? The finger can't be considered lost by me. That was force majeure. Gojo-sensei, according to what you're saying, do I still have to thank Ryaman Sukuna for residing in my body? Gojo Satoru and Kagura-shin looked at Itadori Yuji's nervous appearance and suddenly burst into laughter. Kagura-shin said to him. Don't worry, Gojo-sensei is just trying to scare you. Although the higher UPS will indeed hold us accountable for the loss of the fingers of Ryaman Sukuna, the bulk of the responsibility won't fall on you. I will definitely be reprimanded for leaving Jujutsu High and causing the fingers of Ryaman Sukuna to be lost, and Principal Yaga will also have to take responsibility. Your responsibility is very small, so rest assured. It's just that now that Ryaman Sukuna has truly resurrected, the Jujutsu world will probably fall into a period of turmoil for a while. Kagura Shin wasn't worried at all. After all, Gojo Satoru had said he would bear all the consequences resulting from him leaving Jujutsu High, so he felt very relaxed now. Itadori Yuji finally breathed a sigh of relief, and stared at Gojo Satoru with a resentful look. Haha, Shin is right. I'll take the responsibility. As for the resurrected Ryaman Sukuna, let alone his current state of incomplete power, even if he were in his prime, I would still win after all, I am the strongest. Boom. In a collapsed temple in some unknown mountain ravine in Japan, a violent explosion suddenly rang out. The already dilapidated temple was completely flattened by a powerful shockwave. A four-armed figure slowly walked out from the rising dust. In one hand, he held a twisted finger, slowly putting it into his mouth, while another hand tossed another cursed object up and down. The ninth one. A mere special grade, daring to touch my power. This was none other than Ryaman Sukuna, who was in the process of reclaiming his power. He would not cause any impact on his surroundings while collecting the fingers to prevent himself from being noticed by Jujutsu sorcerers. He did not want any variables to appear before he had collected all the fingers. As for Kenjaku, he was currently taking care of a newly born disaster-level curse spirit. The cursed energy of this newly born disaster-level curse spirit was already comparable to Hanami in their prime, and two types of human fear were perfectly fused within it, giving birth to two cursed techniques. Although the experiment was successful, Ryaman Sukuna's missing power still has nowhere to be replenished. Could it be that I really have to? He flipped through a book he was holding, his gaze lingering on one of the pages. Immortal Technique. Assimilation. Cursed Energy Optimization. It seems I can only have Ryaman Sukuna assimilate Tengen. If Sukuna had the immortal technique, his strength should be able to surpass his prime. Still asking for a rating, thank you everyone. Hashtag 60 Chapter 60 Spellcasting. Chapter 60, Curse Technique Assignment. The accountability letters from the higher UPS arrived at Jujutsu High the next day. Kagura Shin, Masamichi Yaga, and Yuji Itadori each received one, but Kagura Shin didn't even bother to look at his before setting it on fire and tossing it aside. He was very busy now. Megumi Fushiguro had asked him for help with training. After facing Kenjaku, Megumi Fushiguro had realized that although his Shikigami were numerous and capable, they were useless against top-tier combatants. Therefore, he asked Kagura Shin to destroy all of his Shikigami. Divine Dogs, Totality. Round Deer. Toad. Elephant. Tiger Burial. Round Deer. Rabbit Escape. Piercing Ox. Excluding the great serpent that had long been destroyed and the untamed Maharaga, all of Megumi Fushiguro's existing Shikigami, except for the indestructible Rabbit Escape, were ruthlessly shattered by Kagura Shin. Seeing his Shikigami die one by one, Megumi Fushiguro couldn't help but clench his fists. Sorry. I'm just sacrificing you to increase my strength. I really am such a selfish person. The power of the dead Shikigami would merge back into Megumi Fushiguro's shadows. Now, Megumi Fushiguro could no longer summon them individually, he could only use domain expansion to fuse two or more Shikigami together to create new ones. Or he could apply the Shikigami's power to his own body. For example, he could imbue his fist with the power of Piercing Ox when punching, or use the power of Elephant directly to fire a high-pressure water jet. Rabbit Escape was the ultimate vessel within the Ten Shadows technique, specifically used to bear the burden of other Shikigami that had been completely destroyed. Although Rabbit Escape had little use in battle other than using its sheer numbers to obscure the enemy's vision, it possessed one attribute: it could never be completely destroyed. It could serve as a vessel for power infinitely, having a few destroyed had no impact. Ten Shadows technique, what a perfect curse technique. 8 Shikigami used for combat, each possessing powerful senses of smell, sharp claws and fangs, flight capabilities, methods to bind enemies, long-range attacks, immense strength, and recovery abilities, and there's even a Shikigami dedicated to serving as a vessel. Is the final form a nearly omnipotent Shikigami, and a Shikigami that can adapt to all things, or is it that these two are also destroyed to perform a final fusion? After his Shikigami were destroyed, Megumi Fushiguro went off to the side to familiarize himself with his new power, while Kagura-shin went to the back mountain alone, and spent a long time building several experience farms for alays and silverfish. The reason he hadn't built them before was, first, because constantly swinging a sword was very tiring, second, the experience points gained weren't particularly impressive, and third, Kagura-shin previously lacked a sense of crisis and didn't want to expend the effort to grind for experience points. However, now that Kenjaku had begun large-scale operations and Ryaman Sukuna had detached from Yuji Itadori's body, the situation had become somewhat uncontrollable, forcing him to start grinding for experience. Can I only grind 50 levels in an hour? Killing a single ordinary special grade cursed spirit gives me 40 or 50 levels. However, special grade cursed spirits weren't that easy to encounter, whereas grinding for experience was different. Let's try using a command block. /kill all silverfish, /experience autocollect and store. Kagura-shin used his maximum technique to create a chest imbued with the store experience ability, placed it next to the experience farm, and then calculated the input and output. Semi-automatic with 50 levels per hour versus fully automatic with 5 levels per hour. Then obviously fully automatic it is. As long as he built a few more experience farms, the hourly income would be quite substantial. No sooner said than done, Kagura-shin quickly built 10 experience farms on the back mountain, and then left directly. On the way back, he saw Yoshino Junpei training alone. Lacking an innate curse technique, he had already fallen far behind. He knew this himself, so he wanted to learn from Mei to train his physical combat skills. At least, let me narrow the distance between me and them, at least let me barely be able to see their backs. Kagura-shin took out a command block and pondered. Assign curse technique. There's no reason I can't do what Kenjaku could do using Mahito's curse technique. But before that, I'd better experiment first. Attack non-sorcerers. That seems to violate the rules of the Jujutsu world. However, Kagura-shin still found Satoru Gojo and discussed it with him. No problem. As long as you don't let the higher UPS find out, it's fine. But you can only use those who have committed heinous crimes for the experiment. Anyway, you don't need that many people, right? The next day, Satoru Gojo personally arranged for servants from the Gojo family to bring several heinous criminals from prison. He and Kagura-shin arrived together at an unmanned abandoned factory. Kagura-shin put down the command block and gave an order to only one of them. /randomly assign curse technique. Arg. Ah. The man in front of Kagura-shin suddenly felt a splitting headache, as if someone were constantly cutting into his brain with a knife. But after the pain, he suddenly discovered a surge of power flowing within his body. Satoru Gojo scanned him with his 6 eyes and nodded at Kagura-shin. /deprive curse technique. After another burst of screams, the man's curse technique was directly stripped away. Along with the cursed technique, his life also dissipated /respawn in place. The man lying on the ground gradually turned into white particles and soon reappeared. Satoru Gojo observed him for a moment and said to Kagura-shin. The cursed technique didn't disappear. It's likely already bound to his life. Losing the curse technique results in immediate death, and respawning also brings the curse technique back with him. Kagura-shin took out a trident, stabbed him to death, and turned his gaze to another person. Does assigning a curse technique randomly cost 50 levels of experience? Deprivation costs the same level, /assign 6 eyes and limitless void. Nothing happened after the command was issued, it seemed like there wasn't enough experience. /assign blood manipulation. After issuing this command, Kagura-shin suddenly widened his eyes. The 500 or 600 levels of experience collected over the 11 or 12 hours from yesterday to today were drained directly, and another 200 or 300 levels were deducted from Kagura-shin, making his heart ache with a sudden spasm. Fortunately, the experience farms will be able to fully recover in less than a day. After stabbing this person to death with another trident strike, Kagura-shin nodded at Satoru Gojo and said, "It's over, Gojo-sensei. The rest are of no use." You don't need them anymore. Shin, don't you have any other experiments you want to do? Let's just do them all today. The rating is out. The initial rating was set at 6.7, which is actually not bad. I remember most of my peers start around 6.3. I'd like to thank everyone here for helping to comment. Chapter 61, Yoshino Junpei and Curse Technique. Alright then. It just so happens I have quite a few experiments left to do, so I'll have to trouble Gojo-sensei to help me check the results. Satoru Gojo's 6 eyes could clearly see the physical changes after the experiments. For Kagura-shin, having his help truly saved a lot of trouble. Then let's continue with the cursed object extraction experiment. After creating an incarnation and extracting it using a command block, the person from whom the cursed object was extracted did indeed return to their original state, but they just stood there blankly without moving, though their breathing and heartbeat were completely normal. Satoru Gojo discovered the anomaly with just a glance of his 6 eyes. The soul has been crushed. An ordinary human soul cannot compete with a cursed spirit for control of the body. Even if you extract the cursed object, the soul will not recover. /soul resurrection. Following the command, the soul that had been crushed by the cursed spirit was restored, and the person who had been standing there blankly returned to normal. The experiment was a success. Next item. Let's try to resurrect the human soul while extracting the cursed spirit's soul. The experimental results were fairly successful. The body twisted by the cursed object could not return to its original state, but at least it retained the consciousness of a human, and the cursed technique of a cursed spirit. The only difference from directly granting a cursed technique might be the addition of an ugly appearance. After all the experiments were finished, Satoru Gojo and Kagura-shin returned to Jujutsu High. Kagura-shin needed to replenish his experience points before he could help Megumi Fushiguro's sister extract the soul of Yorozu, though Yoshino Junpei's curse technique issue could be solved first. Yoshino Junpei was actually born with a curse technique, but he lacked the neural pathways in his brain to activate it. However, Kagura-shin felt that his innate curse technique was a bit weak, so he prepared to give him a stronger one. Although a curse technique is bound to life, Kagura-shin could strengthen it based on his basic curse technique. Junpei, are you ready to welcome your brand new power? The process might be a little painful. Yes. I am ready. I can accept any pain. Good, then. Strengthen Yoshino Junpei's curse technique to the limit. Change Yoshino Junpei's brain pathways to enable him to use curse technique. Yoshino Junpei instantly felt as if someone had shoved a blender into his brain and stirred it. The intense pain caused him to pass out immediately. While unconscious, in his hazy consciousness, he seemed to sink into an ocean. His own body seemed to have turned into a jellyfish in the ocean, and all around him was a large group of sky-blue jellyfish gathered into a large mass, wrapping him in the center. But very soon, Yoshino Junpei regained consciousness, though his mind was still a bit dazed. Was that just now an innate domain? Kagura-shin reached out to pull him up and asked. Are you all right? You should be able to use your curse technique now. Yoshino Junpei nodded, slowly raised his hand, and activated his cursed technique. In an instant, small, round, blue jellyfish emerged from his palm, and in no time, they gathered into a large pile surrounding him. Are these little guys your Shikigami? It looks like a summoning-type curse technique. No, they aren't my Shikigami, at least not just my Shikigami. They are more like a part of my body. As soon as he finished speaking, Yoshino Junpei's entire body instantly turned into a large mass of small jellyfish, scattered, and then reassembled into 2 identical Yoshino Junpei. As for the small jellyfish that had been separated at the beginning, they split into 2 groups and surrounded both of them. Kagura-shin curiously scooped one up and kneaded it in his hand. It feels just like jelly, it feels quite fragile. As soon as he finished speaking, the jellyfish in Kagura Shin's hand exploded, turning into a puddle of blue liquid. After coming into contact with this blue liquid, the flow of cursed energy throughout Kagura Shin's body became very difficult, and it even felt as if his soul was slowly becoming dull. Ah! Junpei, this jelly-fish is poisonous. Yoshino Junpei hurriedly reassembled into one, and then removed the cursed toxin from Kagura Shin's body. Sorry, Shin. These children have their own consciousness after being separated. They might have been throwing a tantrum just now. Once I get used to the curse technique, this won't happen again. Yoshino Junpei's new curse technique allows him to turn into jellyfish himself, or consume cursed energy to create small jellyfish. When his limbs are damaged, such as if a hand or foot is broken off, he can use cursed energy to create small jellyfish and merge them into his body to regrow them directly. Starting off ahead of others with a reverse curse technique. The jellyfish's tentacles inject cursed toxin into any enemy they touch. Even if the opponent uses cursed energy to defend, the cursed toxin will first blend into the cursed energy used for defense, and then seep into their body. He can also carry out suicide attacks, self-destructing directly to splash the toxin everywhere. A curse technique that strengthens the paralysis effect in Yoshino Junpei's cursed energy is simply invincible for crowd control. Alright, Junpei, continue researching your curse technique on your own. I have things to do, so I'll be heading off first. Hashtag 62 Chapter 62 Insulting High-Ranking Officials. Chapter 62, Insulting the Higher UPS. Bonus chapter for exceeding a 7-point rating. The rating is rising quite fast, thank you all for your support, readers. Kagura Shin went to the back mountain again to continue building experience farms. He felt that 10 experience farms were still not enough, so he increased the number of experience farms to 30. This will do for now. I still need to take care of business first. After withdrawing a large amount of experience points from the experience storage box, he went to find Fushiguro Megumi, who was continuing his cursed energy training. Upon hearing from Kagura Shin that he could heal his sister, Fushiguro Megumi rushed over directly, grabbed Kagura Shin's shoulders with both hands, and confirmed repeatedly. Really? That's great. Tsumaki, she can finally wake up. Soon, Gojo Satoru brought Tsumaki Fushiguro to the Jujutsu High Infirmary. It must be said that Kenjaku does have some skill. He was actually able to use a special barrier technique to deceive the observation of the 6 eyes and implant the soul of a curse user from 1,000 years ago into someone else's body. Regardless of anything else, he is truly very strong when it comes to barrier techniques. Megumi, your sister's body has been influenced by the person inside her for too long. The curse technique has most likely already been inscribed on her body. Forcibly stripping the cursed technique is no longer possible, we can only strip the soul inside her. As for Tsumaki's soul, it has probably already died. Strip the soul of Yorozu, resurrect Tsumaki Fushiguro's soul. With the consumption of a large amount of experience points, the cursed mark on Tsumaki Fushiguro's forehead slowly faded. A strange yet powerful soul was stripped out by Kagura Shin, and subsequently grabbed and crushed directly by Gojo Satoru. Tsumaki Fushiguro, on the hospital bed, slowly opened her eyes. The first thing she saw when she opened her eyes was Fushiguro Megumi standing by the hospital bed with an anxious face. Megumi, is that you? It's me, Tsumaki, you're awake, finally awake. Fushiguro Megumi lowered his head, tears streaming down from the corners of his eyes, his voice even trembling slightly. Regarding Fushiguro Megumi's address to Tsumaki Fushiguro, actually, Fushiguro Megumi generally wouldn't call Tsumaki Fushiguro sister, after all, he is at Tsundere. Although Tsumaki Fushiguro didn't know exactly what had happened, she still gently patted his head. Although I don't know the specific situation, you must have suffered a lot, right? You've worked hard, little Megumi. This touching scene was suddenly interrupted by the flashing light of the mobile phone in Gojo Satoru's hand. Even Kagura Shin couldn't bear to watch it anymore. Hey, Gojo-sensei, it's not really appropriate to take pictures of Megumi's embarrassing crying face in this situation. Oh my, sorry. It's a rare opportunity, I couldn't help myself. You two continue, Shin, and I will leave first. Kagura Shin was helplessly dragged out by Gojo Satoru, who was pulling his clothes. He still wanted to watch the drama of the siblings' reunion for a while longer. Alright, Shin, I have some serious business to discuss with you. The higher UPS want you to hand over the fingers of Ryam and Sukuna. The reason is that they aren't at ease with them in your hands. After all, Jujutsu High has already lost the fingers inside Yuji. The words of those higher UPS can indeed be treated as wind passing by the ear, but this time they actually consulted Master Tengen. Master Tengen's instruction is for you to hand over half. You have 7 in your hands, so you need to hand over 3. What do you think? Huh? The cursed object I handed over last time hasn't been found yet, and now you want me to hand over more. I don't want to. Hearing Kagura Shin's statement, Gojo Satoru couldn't help but laugh. That's right, Shin, that's exactly how it should be. Be tough, if you won't hand it over, then don't. I knew you would answer like this, so I have already rejected those higher UPS on your behalf. Tomorrow the higher UPS will send people to test your strength. Remember to beat them up hard, okay? Rejected on my behalf. Did you reject them using my identity, or your own identity, Gojo-sensei? Gojo Satoru smiled without saying a word and immediately teleported out of Kagura Shin's sight. Meanwhile, in a dark room full of paper doors, a large screen was projecting the refusal message that Gojo Satoru had sent using Kagura Shin's identity. Kagura Shin, asking me for fingers. Who do you think you are? A bunch of old immortals. If you have the ability, come and take them yourselves. How about this, send some people over to snatch them from me. If you snatch them, they're yours. If you can't, it just proves you can't protect cursed objects at all, so they might as well stay in my hands. You bunch of trash, remember to send more people over, otherwise it won't be enough for me to fight. I #/ and #at. This is too bullying. Does he really think that just because Gojo Satoru is protecting him, we can't do anything to him? He's just a grade 1 Jujutsu sorcerer with slightly stronger strength. Just because he exorcised a few special grade cursed spirits, he thinks he's invincible. Send people to teach him a lesson tomorrow. Let him know that one should be humble. Pass the order down, no need to hold back. Seconded. Just like that, without Kagura Shin knowing anything, a dark, heavy pot was suddenly placed on his back. And the instigator, Gojo Satoru, widely distributed invitations to everyone he knew to come to Jujutsu High tomorrow to watch this good show. He wanted to build momentum for Kagura Shin, the bigger the better. It's about time to add another special grade sorcerer. Chapter 63, 5 against 1. The next morning, several black sedans drove into Jujutsu High. A large group of people poured out of the cars, heading to the conference room with Gojo Satoru and Yaga Mazamichi for a meeting. Gojo Satoru stood on the podium and scanned the grade 1 Jujutsu sorcerers below. First, sitting in the first seat on the right, was an old man with completely white hair, combed back into a long, shoulder-length style. He had thin eyebrows, a long mustache resembling an English-style beard, wore a light-colored haori over a dark yukata, had a giant gourd hanging from his waist, and wore a pair of wooden geta sandals on his feet. He was none other than the 26th head of the Zenin family, Zenin no Obito. His curse technique is projection sorcery, and he is known as the strongest grade 1 Jujutsu sorcerer, and the fastest Jujutsu sorcerer, aside from Gojo Satoru. Although he appears to be an ostentatious and arrogant old man, Zenin no Obito is actually the most open-minded Jujutsu sorcerer in the history of the Zenin family. Sitting in the first seat on the left was a middle-aged man with short black hair, chewing on a lollipop. He was Kyusuke Butsuya, the strongest contemporary user of the new shadow style, Simple Domain. The second person on the right was a young man with blonde hair dyed, originally black. He bore a slight resemblance to Zenin no Obito, but his naturally upturned eyes gave him a sinister look. This was Zenin Naoya, who inherited his father's projection sorcery. He was a special grade 1 Jujutsu sorcerer. The special didn't refer to his strength being exceptionally high, but rather to his status, as he was not subject to the orders of the higher UPS, and was quite unique. The second person on the left was Kento Nanami, and the third on the right was Mei Mei, with her younger brother Ui sitting on a chair behind her. A total of 5 grade 1 Jujutsu sorcerers, all of whom were the elite among their grade. This was the lineup the higher UPS sent to teach a lesson to Kagura Shin. It is no exaggeration to say that if these 5 worked together, exorcising a disaster-grade cursed spirit would not be difficult. Gojo Satoru spoke up. As Shin said in his reply to the higher UPS, if you win, the fingers will be returned in full. If you lose, the cursed object will remain in his possession. Remember, do not hold anything back, or you won't achieve the effect I'm looking for. The latter part was directed at Kusakabe and Nanami. Since both were on Gojo's side, they would inevitably hold back, so Gojo Satoru added that remark. As for Mei Mei, that money grubber, the amount the higher UPS offered was not small, so she would certainly put in enough effort. Gojo Satoru even transferred 10 million to her to make sure she put in extra effort. As for the battleground, it remained the battered training grounds of Jujutsu High. It was estimated that after this battle, the entire training ground would need to be renovated. After the meeting, Gojo Satoru found Kagura Shin, who was collecting experience points in the mountains behind the school. Shin, I know you'll definitely win, but I have one request, win in a flashy way. It would be best to use those large-scale attacks that aren't very useful a few times. Whether they deal damage isn't important, just make it look impressive to others. Can you do that? I'll try. Actually, I was planning to just use domain expansion to end the fight quickly from the start. Oh, this is just an exhibition match. Just make it flashy, whether it's useful doesn't matter. There's another match after this one. I've called that Yuki Tsukumo back, so just save your strength to fight her. From the very beginning, Gojo Satoru had intended for Yuki Tsukumo to serve as a stepping stone for Kagura Shin to reach special grade, while the 5 grade 1 Jujutsu sorcerers were just there to provide a warm-up exhibition match. Gojo Satoru stood with one foot on the edge of the spectator stands, holding a microphone, passionately introducing the performers on the training ground. Sitting in the spectator stands were all the second years, Ui, everyone from Kyoto Jujutsu High including the principal and teachers, all the first years except for Kagura Shin, and Yuki Tsukumo. Kagura Shin was surrounded by the 5 grade 1 Jujutsu sorcerers, but there wasn't even a trace of panic on his face. As Gojo Satoru pulled the trigger of the starter pistol, all 6 people in the arena activated their cursed techniques simultaneously. Kagura Shin used a new move he hadn't used since he learned it. After all, the command block was just too useful, and Kagura Shin hadn't used his curse technique seriously for a long time. Domain expansion, fusion creation. Kagura Shin had learned this domain expansion from Fushiguro Megumi. It allowed him to extract the traits of various items or creatures and synthesize them into one. Although it wasn't as unrestricted as a maximum technique, which could modify the properties of items at will, the good thing was that it didn't require consuming experience points, it only required consuming some pre-stored items and cursed energy. Boom! A massive warden landed with a thud. However, this warden was over 4 meters tall, and had a pair of ender dragon wings on its back, with purple particles constantly appearing and slowly dissipating around it. The moment it appeared, everyone's vision in the vicinity instantly became extremely narrow. Even by reinforcing their eyes with cursed energy, they could barely see anything beyond a meter around their bodies. New Shadow Style, Simple Domain. Kusakabe Tsuya immediately released his super-large-range Simple Domain, wanting to weaken the cursed technique effect of the monster in front of him. A normal Simple Domain couldn't do this, but Kusakabe Tsuya was at the forefront of the entire Jujutsu world on the path of Simple Domains. Relying on the high-density cursed energy within his Simple Domain, he could simply mimic a true domain. After all, even Gojo Satoru and Ryaman Sukuna had praised his simple domain when they saw it. Roar! Just as Kyuzukabe had expanded his simple domain, the warden's sonic cannon blasted towards him. Kyuzukabe. Targeting me, are you? Hashtag 60 for Chapter 60 for Grand Scale. Chapter 64, Grand Momentum. Could everyone please leave some comments or feedback? Paragraph comments or reviews are both fine. Relying on his superb perception within his simple domain, Kyuzukabe drew the katana at his waist to block almost instantly. New Shadow Style, IAI, Evening Moon. Boom. The sharp slash collided with the powerful sonic wave of the warden. Although Kyuzukabe's slash was extremely powerful, it was still somewhat weak against the warden created by Kagura Shin's domain expansion. The sonic cannon's power was significantly reduced by the slash, but it still struck Kyuzukabe squarely. He felt as if he had been hit by a car, flying backward several meters, rolling on the ground several times, and spitting out a mouthful of blood. Mei immediately raised the massive axe in her hands and swung at the warden to prevent it from taking further action, buying Kyuzukabe Itsuya some time to catch his breath. Relying on bird manipulation, she had several crows fly far outside the main battlefield to avoid the darkness effect of the warden, and then shared vision with the crows, remaining almost entirely unaffected by the warden's darkness effect. Therefore, among everyone present, she was the only one who still retained almost all of her combat power. The warden raised both arms to block Mei's giant axe. Bang! Although Mei's strike hit the warden squarely, she was also knocked back by the warden's immense strength, and the wound carved by the axe on the warden was healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. It was the regeneration effect of the Vex. Zenin Naobito and Kento Nanami used cursed energy to enhance their hearing, located the warden, and launched attacks one after another. Relying on his extremely high mobility, Zenin Naobito reached the warden in an instant and placed his palm on its body. The warden, which had just been preparing to attack him, stiffened, as if a movie had been paused. This was projection sorcery. Creatures touched by the sorcerer's palm would be forcibly frozen for 1 second if they did not move according to the actions predetermined by the sorcerer. Having frozen the warden's massive body, Zenin Naobito did not stop moving. Instead, he followed the sound of Kagura Shin's heartbeat, reached him, drew the sword-like cursed tool at his waist, and slashed down. Kento Nanami followed closely behind Zenin Naobito, seizing the 1-second window where the warden was frozen to slash at its body. Ratio technique. Bang. Using the ratio technique to forcibly divide the warden's body into a 7-to-3 ratio to create a weak point, he carved a massive wound into the warden's body with a single slash. Mei also simultaneously activated Bird Strike, summoning a crow to charge at the warden in a suicide attack. However, the moment the crow touched the warden's body, accompanied by a scattering of purple light particles, the warden's massive body instantly vanished from where it stood and reappeared not far away. Mei's Bird Strike slammed into the ground, creating a large crater. This was the immunity to ranged attacks gained from fusing with an Enderman. Clang! The cursed tool Zenin Naobito swung at Kagura Shin was easily blocked by the netherite armor that instantly covered his entire body. Subsequently, Zenin Naobito was forced back by the trident swung by Kagura Shin. Yuki Tsukumo and Satoru Gojo were chatting about the battle below from the stands. Yuki Tsukumo, huh? Their combat movements are a bit distorted. Could they be affected by some abnormal status effect? Satoru Gojo shrugged, indicating he didn't know either, then asked Yuki Tsukumo, if you were to face Shin, what are your odds of winning? Ah. This kid. I have looked into his curse technique, it is indeed quite troublesome. But he isn't even fighting seriously right now. Is he unwilling to even open his domain? I recall he doesn't suffer from curse technique burnout, right? Oh? I didn't expect you to be so well informed. Did Nobara tell you? So you think you'll lose? After hearing Satoru Gojo's words, Yuki Tsukumo smiled and replied confidently, I will win. After all, I am a special grade sorcerer with even more seniority than you, kid. Satoru Gojo didn't know why, but he always felt this conversation was a bit strange. However, perhaps he was just overthinking it. He was already impatient to see the scene of Yuki Tsukumo getting beaten up. The battle below continued. The 5 Grade 1 Jujutsu sorcerers had gathered together to jointly deal with the warden in front of them. Mei used domain expansion to synchronize the crow's vision to the other 4 people. Although the other 4 were not accustomed to the crow's vision, it was acceptable compared to being in total darkness. Zenin Naobito said that Shikigami has strong recovery abilities, and from the battle just now, it's clear that all ranged attacks are likely ineffective. So in a moment, I will use projection sorcery to freeze it. Nanami, Mei, and Kusakabe, the 3 of you attack with full force and strive to eliminate it in one go. If once isn't enough, repeat the process. Naoya, you go and hold off that kid, don't let him participate in the battle. Kagura Shin watched the group discuss tactics from afar without even lifting an eyelid. He simply placed a dozen T-shaped objects made of soul sand around him. As the 5 began to act according to their planned strategy, he instantly completed the creation of a dozen withers, followed by dozens of iron golems and dozens of snow golems. The densely packed curse technique creations made the 5 Grade 1 Jujutsu sorcerers' scalps tingle. Domain expansion, a fusion creation. After creating for more fused warden to ensure that every Grade 1 could have one as an opponent, Kagura Shin said to them, "It seems you have already discussed your battle plan. Then let us officially begin." The iron golems and snow golems, lined up in formation, were as orderly as soldiers waiting for inspection. Every step the iron golem army took forward caused the earth to shake as if there were an earthquake. The snowballs thrown by the snow golems and the wither skulls thrown by the withers were overwhelming, and the 5 warden were more like generals of the army, leading the 2 legions forward to charge. Chapter 65, Overwhelming Victory. Gojo Satoru, watching from the stands, nodded with satisfaction at the massive commotion Kagura Shin had stirred up. In truth, he didn't need this many curse technique creations, as just those few warden and the wither would have been enough to secure victory, while the remaining iron golems and snow golems were merely there for show. However, seeing this regimented, army-like formation, Gojo Satoru couldn't help but think of that dear friend who fought by manipulating cursed spirits. Although both manipulated a massive horde of cursed spirits to fight, the chaotic nature of the others couldn't compare to Kagura Shin's orderly ranks. Yuki Tsukumo, on the other hand, couldn't help but gape in astonishment. To think he could achieve this level. The battle is essentially over by now, aren't you going to call a stop to it, Gojo? Gojo Satoru just watched her quietly and said softly. If it's just like this, he'd still have to bicker with the higher UPS to become a special grade sorcerer. Shin needs a stronger opponent to demonstrate his strength. After saying this, Gojo Satoru stared straight at Yuki Tsukumo without another word, and she seemed to understand his meaning, clenching her fists. I was wondering why you called me over to watch the show for no reason, so I'm part of the show myself, am I? You want me to be his stepping stone, and see if he truly has the strength for it. In truth, based on Kagura Shin's current performance, it would be simple to apply for the title of special grade sorcerer for him, but what Gojo Satoru wanted wasn't to beg for the higher UPS approval, but to have the higher UPS beg Kagura Shin to accept the special grade title. Yuki Tsukumo summoned the Horin and vaulted directly from the stands, reaching the center of the battlefield in a few strides. Okay. Time for a change. Leave the rest to me. Without waiting for the others' agreement, she immediately activated her cursed technique on her own. Boom. The horn shrank into a sphere and landed at Yuki Tsukumo's feet, where she violently kicked it toward Kagura Shin, who was not far away. Along the way, both iron golems and snow golems were ground into fragments by the horn's astonishing virtual mass, and Kagura Shin stretched his limbs slightly and activated a command block. Slash resistance V, strength 255, speed 255. He could certainly use slash kill directly, but the visual impact wouldn't be as great as catching Yuki Tsukumo's horn barehanded. Placing a bedrock block behind him as an anchor point, Kagura Shin raised both hands and caught the high-speed horn firmly. What? It wasn't just Yuki Tsukumo on the field who was shocked. Everyone watching who knew her strength, besides Gojo Satoru, widened their eyes in disbelief. Don't be fooled by how she kicked the horn like a soccer ball. The power of that strike could easily exorcise a powerful special-grade cursed spirit. If Gojo Satoru was an overpowered mechanic conceived by the author with their heel, then Yuki Tsukumo was an overpowered stat block filled in by the author with their toes, the ultimate stat monster of the Jujutsu world. Yet, a strike like that was caught by Kagura Shin with effortless ease. Kagura Shin threw the horn right back. Although Yuki Tsukumo had subconsciously reduced its mass to its normal state, the horn still whistled past her, carrying a gale of wind, crashing through several buildings at Jujutsu High before embedding itself deep into the mountain behind the school. Gojo Satoru sat in the stands with his legs crossed, smiling with satisfaction. That's it. Achieve an overwhelming victory. Boom. Kagura Shin suddenly moved. His speed was so fast that his movement created a sharp sonic boom. In an instant, he was in front of Yuki Tsukumo, throwing a punch at her. Yuki Tsukumo likewise increased the virtual mass of her fist to its limit, colliding with Kagura Shin's fist. Bang! Kagura Shin's fist crushed Yuki Tsukumo's entire arm without any resistance, and the wind pressure generated by his punch even blew everyone in the stands behind her backward. Domain expansion, Genesis. Though it was no longer necessary, out of respect for Yuki Tsukumo, Kagura Shin still activated his domain expansion, and the massive domain effortlessly enveloped everyone in the vicinity. Hum, crackle. An unusual sound made everyone look up above the domain, where a massive mechanical construct floated like a giant seagull in midair. Its magnificent and grand appearance made even Yuki Tsukumo momentarily forget that she was currently inside Kagura Shin's domain. Come forth. Orbital Dragon Slayer Cannon. The original Orbital Dragon Slayer Cannon was certainly powerful, but it couldn't move, and could only attack simply from top to bottom, with a very small attack range. However, within the domain, it carried the domain's guaranteed hit effect, making the range and attack method irrelevant, as long as the power was great enough, that was enough. Boom. Accelerated by countless TNT, when that single arrow was fired from the muzzle of the Orbital Dragon Slayer cannon, its speed approached the speed of light. No one could see what exactly was fired from the muzzle. They only saw a beam of light instantly pierce through the entire space. Yuki Tsukumo, who was locked onto, didn't even have time to use domain expansion to neutralize or counter it before she was turned into ashes by the impact of the lightspeed arrow. Asking for a rating, thanks everyone in advance. Hashtag 66 Chapter 66 Death and Migration. Chapter 66, Culling Game. The power of Kagura Shin was deeply imprinted in the hearts of the onlookers, and Yoshinobu Gakkiganji was so shocked that he opened the eyes he had originally kept hidden beneath his eyebrows. Yuki Tsukumo, was she just taken out like that? However, before he could say anything, Kagura Shin directly issued a command. /respawn Yuki Tsukumo in place. With a drift of white particles, Yuki Tsukumo, who had originally been blasted into ashes, appeared again on the spot, completely unharmed. Even Yuki Tsukumo could not comprehend such an unreasonable curse technique. Is this a curse technique that should exist in this world? If Kagura Shin's instant kill earlier had proven his combat prowess, then this act of resurrection pushed him into a realm called God. Yuki Tsukumo could not imagine how she could ever defeat this person. Even her trump card would likely just be a joke in front of Kagura Shin. This was a gap in realms. Even if all modern special-grade sorcerers were gathered together, victory would be impossible. I lost. As the news spread, the entire Jujutsu world was in an uproar. The higher UPS of the Jujutsu world no longer mentioned having Kagura Shin hand over the fingers of Ryaman Sukuna. It took them only an hour to prepare the identification information for a special-grade sorcerer, and hand it to Kagura Shin, which was then announced throughout the entire Jujutsu world. The underground black market offered a high bounty of $50 billion for Kagura Shin, but not a single curse user dared to accept the bounty. Kenjaku, who was sunbathing in Dagon's domain, also received the intelligence sent by a mole in the higher UPS. After reading it, his expression suddenly turned gloomy. Meanwhile, Ryaman Sukuna, who had recovered 13 fingers, also finished reading the news. The arrogant and unruly king of curses rarely showed a solemn expression. Hey Kenjaku, let's discuss that idea you told me about last time again, assimilating that human named Tengen. 3 days later, a super large-scale barrier appeared again in the Fukuoka region of Japan. The higher UPS hoped that a special-grade sorcerer could be sent to investigate the cause. Since Kagura-shin was too bored, he went over to investigate the cause, but before leaving, he left a portal inside Jujutsu High just in case. However, the moment Kagura-shin stepped into the Fukuoka region barrier, he realized something was wrong. He had arrived inside the barrier less than 48 hours after it appeared, but looking around, the entire interior of the barrier was like the apocalypse, filled with flames everywhere. Kagura-shin could hardly find a single intact building. Small cursed spirits floated in mid-air. When one of them sensed Kagura-shin's intrusion, it immediately flew over and exposed its belly to him. Welcome to experience the culling game, Kagura-shin. Now let me announce the rules. Kagura-shin couldn't even be bothered to keep reading. He directly smashed the beetle in front of him into a pile of dust with a punch, then took out a portal block and built it in front of him. He had already realized that something was not right. Gojo Satoru had not even been sealed yet, so why would the culling game start? Moreover, the super-huge barrier that originally covered the entire Japan except for Hokkaido now only covered the Fukuoka region. But at this moment, the voice of Kenjaku came out of the mouths of several beetles in the air. Do you want to use a curse technique to teleport back to Tokyo? Don't waste your energy. Although your curse technique is indeed the strongest I have seen in 1,000 years, why do you think you can counter the barrier I spent 1,000 years setting up with just a mere curse technique? The cursed energy stored for 1,000 years is released all at once. You can even think of this barrier as a special domain. Although you won't be affected by anything inside it other than the rules, it is simply impossible for you to leave so easily. Kagura-shin turned a deaf ear to Kenjaku's words. While he was speaking, he had already built the portal. After injecting experience points, he dove straight in. Accompanied by a drift of colorful particles, Kagura-shin's figure did indeed disappear from the spot, but it did not teleport very far, it only teleported to the inner edge of the barrier connecting the two portals. Can't leave the barrier just by teleporting. Then I'll have to try the command block. Kagura-shin placed the command block on the ground, reached out and pressed his hand on it, sensing the position of the command block he had placed at Jujutsu High. /TP command block in the Jujutsu High dormitory. Kagura-shin's experience points did not decrease, the TP failed. It was just like being restricted by a plugin from leaving a fixed area while playing a game, unable to leave. Kagura-shin took back the command block and looked at the beetle in the sky, saying, I didn't expect to underestimate you. Your barrier technique is indeed quite skilled. Now you can tell me the rules of this bullshit game. Of course, Kagura-shin also knew that such a powerful barrier could not be maintained indefinitely. The facts were indeed so. The barrier that old schemer Kenjaku had prepared for 1,000 years could only last for a month or two without any external interference. Calculated down, this barrier had to burn through 17 years of accumulated cursed energy every single day. Chapter 67, Satoru Gojo enters the game. Then let me introduce the rules of the game. 1. Players must pledge to join the game within any barrier within 19 days of awakening. 2. Violating Rule 1 will result in the removal of the curse technique. 3. Non-players who enter a barrier will be considered players who have pledged to participate. 4. Players earn points by taking the lives of other players. 5. Points refer to the value assigned to each player by the game master. In principle, Jujutsu sorcerers are worth 5 points, and non-sorcerers are worth 1 point. 6. Players can negotiate with the game master to add a rule by consuming 100 points, excluding the points assigned to themselves. 7. As long as it does not affect the continuation of the culling game, the added rule must be approved. 8. If there is no change in points within 19 days of participating or earning points, the curse technique will be removed. 9. Anyone covered by the prioritized barrier can leave the barrier freely after the game officially begins, and will no longer be affected by the 8 rules above. 10. People within the prioritized barrier who wish to participate in the game must take a pledge. After pledging, they will be bound by the 8 rules above, but they will receive 2 points every day. By the way, the game doesn't officially start until 3 days from now, so you just need to stay inside the barrier and behave for 3 days. In other words, is it impossible for anyone currently inside this barrier to have their curse technique removed for not killing anyone? But this doomsday-like scene doesn't look like everyone is just behaving and doing their own thing while waiting to leave freely. Kenjaku also noticed Kagura Shin looking at the raging fire and broken walls ahead, and he couldn't help but laugh. Ha ha ha, this is humanity. By the way, I only had Mahito modify 100 humans who can use cursed techniques and release them. And to protect those ordinary people who were not given curse techniques, I specifically had the cursed spirits distribute firearms to every household for them to use for self-defense. Ha 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 ha. Look at them. In the first 12 hours, although everyone was afraid, they were still living normally, waiting for the game to start so they could leave this barrier. But a small number of people, whether out of hatred or desire, fired the first shot, and the situation became uncontrollable. After a while, it turned into what you see now. After saying this, Kenjaku seemed to have left. He did not speak through the ladybug again. Kagura Shin looked toward the red-burned sky in the distance and slowly walked into the ruins. The culling game is such a cruel game. Through the 6th and 7th rules, it amplifies the desires in people's hearts infinitely, and Kenjaku even provides them with the power and opportunity to satisfy those desires. Perhaps some people won't pick up the weapons Kenjaku provided to satisfy their selfish desires, but they will still worry about their own lives. They will also be afraid that the people around them might pull out a gun at any moment and shoot them. Under this high pressure, everyone in the city is now in danger. You might just be passing by them, but they are already so nervous that there's no telling what they might do. Kenjaku, having dealt with Kagura Shin, was busy making preparations inside Shibuya Station along with Ryaman Sukuna, Hanami, Dagon, and Mahito. Remember, do not cause too many casualties, otherwise Satoru Gojo might recklessly expand his domain and solve everything with violence. After all, Satoru Gojo is not exactly a completely benevolent person. The goal this time is only one, to seal Satoru Gojo. Other things are completely unimportant, do not do anything unnecessary. As Kenjaku raised his finger and chanted the incantation, several layers of veils were quickly set up inside and outside Shibuya Station. Kenjaku couldn't wait until Halloween, the day with the highest foot traffic in the station, but he still specifically chose the morning rush hour, so there were quite a few people in the station. Moreover, the veil he cast was the type that allowed ordinary people to enter but not leave, so the number of people in the station would only continue to grow. The unregistered veil at Shibuya Station was quickly discovered and reported by the windows, and by the time the relevant personnel from the Jujutsu world arrived outside the veil, they could clearly hear the shouting from inside. Get Satoru Gojo to come and save me. Quickly let Satoru Gojo come in alone, only he can come in, otherwise we will all be slaughtered. Who knows Satoru Gojo? Get him to come in and save us. After the news reached Satoru Gojo's ears, before the higher UPS had even issued any instructions, Satoru Gojo had already arrived outside Shibuya Station. Humph, is this the thing Shin mentioned that was specifically targeted at me? It just so happens that I also want to see who that disgusting guy occupying Geto Sugura's body really is. Let me test if the prison realm can actually seal me. After notifying the higher UPS, Satoru Gojo stepped into the veil alone and slowly walked into Shibuya Station. Hashtag 68 Chapter 68 Tianyuan Capture. Chapter 68, Capturing Tengen, in progress. On the chaotic streets of Fukuoka, Kagura Shin casually tossed aside the person impaled on his trident who had tried to attack him, then looked at the group of ordinary people armed with guns standing before him. I don't get it. If you want money, go to a bank vault. If you want lust, I don't have any to give. Why do you insist on provoking me? The people in front of Kagura Shin did not answer his question, but instead just screamed hoarsely. Monster. He's also one of those monsters who can use sorcery, the same kind as the ones who trapped us. Kill him. Kill him. Sigh. It seems your mental state has already deteriorated. Well then, farewell. Boom, boom, boom. Kagura-shin threw a series of TNT sticks, creating a violent explosion. When the thick smoke cleared, the group of people who had blocked his path were scattered everywhere. Kagura-shin had encountered scenes like this several times already, but every single one of them ended the same way. Meanwhile, inside Shibuya Station, Satoru Gojo was walking by stepping on the shoulders or heads of the dense crowd. Those he stepped on naturally cursed and swore, but Satoru Gojo simply ignored them. Through his 6 eyes, he had already spotted several cursed spirits standing in the middle of the station, but he did not see the guy Kagura-shin mentioned who had taken over Suguru Geto's body. With a push of his feet, he sent the person he was stepping on stumbling, and landed steadily in front of the cursed spirits. Satoru Gojo swept a glance over them and said disdainfully, "Is that all of you? A 4-armed brute, a withered tree branch, a giant octopus, and a stitched-up freak. Although this subway station does limit my performance, you lot can't possibly beat me. Where is the guy who took over Geto's body? Let me test how much of Geto's strength he possesses." Ryaman Sukuna was actually amused to the point of laughter by Satoru Gojo's arrogant statement. Although Satoru Gojo's infinity was indeed overpowered, all 4 people present could use domain amplification. 4 against 1, the advantage was his. You're quite arrogant. Jujutsu Sorcerer. Is it the title of modern strongest Jujutsu Sorcerer that gives you such confidence? Satoru Gojo chuckled and denied it. It's the former modern strongest. That title changed hands a long time ago. Boom. Ryaman Sukuna threw a punch at Satoru Gojo, and the battle between the two officially began. In this subway station, Satoru Gojo could barely use any cursed technique, because whether it was red, blue, or purple, they were all large-scale attacks that would easily affect the surrounding ordinary people. Furthermore, teleportation would instantly crush these ordinary people who were as weak as ants. As for domain expansion, that was out of the question. If he excluded the ordinary people from the domain, they would be crushed into meat paste between the outer shell of the domain and the innermost curtain. If he enclosed them within the domain, the massive amount of garbage information would turn them into vegetables. Therefore, Satoru Gojo was forced to use domain amplification to engage in hand-to-hand combat with 4 opponents, who were also using domain amplification. At the entrance of Jujutsu High, Kenjaku and a humanoid cursed spirit beside him, which appeared to be composed of countless black hurricanes, jumped down directly from a flying cursed spirit. That's right, Kenjaku was not at Shibuya Station at all. He intended to forcibly take Tengen away. Currently, the defenses of Jujutsu High were still extremely weak. Yuki Tsukumo had been deployed to guard the vicinity of Shibuya Station, and the remaining Jujutsu sorcerers were also on alert near the station. Wouldn't it be as easy for Kenjaku to enter Jujutsu High as it would be to go home? One of the reasons Kenjaku hadn't entered Tengen's lair in previous attempts was that there was no need, and the other was that it was impossible to enter the tomb chamber in a short amount of time. Tengen's fear of death was on par with Kenjaku's, and the barrier of the tomb chamber was absurdly difficult to break. Even someone with a level of barrier technique similar to Tengen would need about half an hour to break in. With that half hour, Satoru Gojo could teleport all the way from the northernmost tip of Japan to the southernmost tip. Now, Satoru Gojo was held back by Ryaman Sukuna, and beside him was this new disaster-level cursed spirit that had been born not long ago. Its second curse technique, born from absorbing the previous human fear of unknown barriers, was exactly the power to target barriers. Break all barriers. This was the sole effect of its second curse technique. However, every time it broke a barrier, it would fall into curse technique burnout. The stronger the barrier broken, the longer the curse technique burnout would last, but using it as a one-time master key was invincible. Kenjaku placed several cursed objects and opened the outermost barrier of Jujutsu High without Tengen even sensing it. Afterward, he arrived outside the storehouse without anyone noticing. The tomb chamber was to be entered from the storehouse, which was Tengen's lair. After casually killing the guards of the storehouse, Kenjaku looked at the black cursed spirit beside him. Hashira Mutant, this barrier is up to you. The cursed spirit named Hashira Mutant beside him nodded and extended a finger, gently tapping it against Tingen's barrier. Crack! Fine cracks instantly appeared on Tingen's barrier, and the cracks gradually expanded until they covered the entire tomb chamber. Bang! Chapter 69, Tengen Get. Tingen's barrier suddenly shattered, and Hashira Mutant was simultaneously blasted apart, with more than half of its body destroyed by a powerful force, sending it flying several meters to lie on the ground, already in a near-death state. Its only remaining eye stared fixedly at Kenjaku, hoping Kenjaku would come over to help it. Kenjaku, seemingly having anticipated this situation, walked expressionlessly to the side of the dying Hashira Mutant, crouched down, poked its face, and sighed. Ho! That guy Tingen's barrier technique is actually decent. I really didn't expect you to be done for just by dispelling this one barrier. How useless. After sighing, Kenjaku activated Cursed Spirit Manipulation, squeezing the incredulous Hashira Mutant into a black bead and swallowing it. Afterward, Kenjaku walked slowly into the tomb chamber with hands tucked away. Tengen had sent out a distress signal the moment the barrier was destroyed, but even if Yuki Tsukumo rushed back at full speed, it would take 10 minutes. Just as Tengen was wondering what to do, Kenjaku's voice came from behind. Regarding the question of Tingen's gender, I can only say that the current Tengen is no longer the original one. After assimilating with the star plasma vessel, he inherits the star plasma vessel's body and part of its memories. In other words, the current Tengen is a collection of countless people's memories, but his original consciousness occupies the dominant position. He was once female and once male, so I will use he. Hey, Tengen, an old friend has come to visit, aren't you happy? What kind of state is this you're in now? Half human, half cursed spirit. How is that any different from an incarnation? Won't those jujutsu sorcerers come to exorcise you? Ha 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 ha. Kenjaku. We haven't seen each other in hundreds of years, have we? It seems you've been doing well lately. Tengen wanted to stall Kenjaku for a while to buy some time, because he knew that although he could contend with ordinary special-grade cursed spirits using his barrier technique, an immortal technique, he had no ability to resist Kenjaku, who possessed a similar level of barrier technique and had cursed spirit manipulation. Because he knew better than anyone that this body, due to a failed assimilation, had evolved to be closer to a cursed spirit. It would be perfectly controlled by cursed spirit manipulation. Alright, enough small talk, let's get down to business. Domain expansion, womb perfusion. This time, the curse technique Kenjaku added to his domain was cursed spirit manipulation. A massive number of cursed spirits poured out from the central pillar like a tide, roaring as they rushed toward Tengen, among which dozens of special-grade cursed spirits simultaneously unleashed their cursed techniques at Tengen. Tengen relied on his superb barrier technique to neutralize the guaranteed hit effect of Kenjaku's domain, and sealed one special-grade cursed spirit after another into individual small barriers. As for the attacks from the cursed spirits, they had no effect on him, and even if his body was blasted apart, it would quickly recover under the powerful force of the immortal technique, gaining an even stronger body. However, every time he recovered from an injury, Tingen's body became closer to that of a cursed spirit, and while he was busy dealing with the large number of special-grade cursed spirits, Kenjaku had silently arrived at his side and punched a hole through his body. Immortal technique also requires recovery time, right? Tengen. Boom, boom, boom. After a barrage of overwhelming attacks, Tingen's body became battered and broken. Although it was indeed constantly repairing itself, Kenjaku would not give him the chance. Cursed spirit manipulation. I will make good use of your abilities, Tengen, sleep peacefully. No matter how unwilling Tengen was, it was to no avail. Without the ability to fight back, he was directly squeezed into a bead by Kenjaku and caught in his hand. Afterward, Kenjaku quickly left Jujutsu High and headed toward Shibuya Station. Shibuya Station. Satoru Gojo was not at a disadvantage at all while taking on 4, but the 5-way melee had already reduced the number of civilians in the station by a quarter, and Satoru Gojo was already considering whether to directly use domain expansion, no longer caring about the lives of these civilians, to quickly resolve the battle. Boom! Satoru Gojo punched Ryomen Sukuna, sending him flying and smashing a subway train in half. Konami and Mahito immediately followed up on Ryomen Sukuna's fight, and tangled with Satoru Gojo, while Dagon in the back, under the cover of the two, dispelled domain amplification and activated his own curse technique. Death Swarm. Strange piranhas swam through the air and lunged at Satoru Gojo, but apart from making Satoru Gojo throw a few extra punches, they had no effect. Instead, Satoru Gojo, having noticed that Dagon had dispelled domain amplification, also dispelled his own domain amplification. Curse Technique Reversal, Red. A red at minimum output shot straight toward Dagon, blasting it far away and slamming it against the inner wall of the curtain, with an estimated dozen or so people killed or injured during its flight. Seeing this, Ryomen Sukuna couldn't help but mock, "Hey, can you even be called a Jujutsu sorcerer? Don't you need to protect these ants anymore?" Hashtag 70 Chapter 70 Reunion of Old Friends. Chapter 70, Reunion with an Old Friend. Satoru Gojo turned a deaf ear to Sukuna's taunts, and continued his fierce attack on Dagon. Having been caught and beaten by Satoru Gojo once when he hadn't used domain amplification, Dagon had learned his lesson. No matter how many openings Satoru Gojo exposed, he would no longer deactivate his domain amplification. The five of them tangled together again, evenly matched. Although Satoru Gojo's curse technique was the strongest among the five, its advantage was completely nullified now that everyone was using domain amplification. While his martial arts skills were not weak, he was truly outnumbered, and could only fight to a draw against the four of them. Suddenly, the sound of a subway train entering the station came from afar, drawing Satoru Gojo's attention. That's not right. No matter how useless those higher UPS are, they wouldn't possibly let the subway operate normally while Shibuya Station is enveloped by a curtain. The cursed spirit side breathed a sigh of relief, for this was the prearranged signal. The train entering the station proved that Kenjaku had completed his task and returned to Shibuya. Screech. Even though it was impossible for there to be a driver on the subway, and all electronic equipment had failed, the train still came to a steady stop at the station. Those descending from the platform were naturally not ordinary humans, but a dense army of transfigured humans. Moreover, a portion of these transfigured humans surged with powerful cursed energy. They were the batches of curse users transformed by Mahito. Once the transfigured humans got off the train, they immediately lunged at the nearest ordinary people, tearing and clawing at them. The subway station, already filled with screams due to Satoru Gojo's battle, was now blanketed in a layer of bloody crimson. However, Kenjaku still did not appear. It was not yet the right time. Satoru Gojo had not expended much energy in the recent battle. As long as he did not use domain expansion, Satoru Gojo's consumption of cursed energy was incredibly close to zero, and he had remained in his prime state the entire time. Kenjaku's plan could only be carried out when Satoru Gojo was exhausted, so he had to force Satoru Gojo to use domain expansion, increasing his mental pressure and causing his basic judgment to falter. Only by appearing before Satoru Gojo in Geto Sugiru's body at this moment could Kenjaku achieve effective results. Sure enough, when Satoru Gojo saw so many transfigured humans, he chose to perform domain expansion. Domain expansion, unlimited void. A 0.2-second domain expansion was the best solution Satoru Gojo could think of. Although he was confident that his domain expansion could instantly crush the domain amplification of those four and affect them, the duration of the effect on Ryomen Sukuna might be shorter than on the other three, so he had to end the battle faster. Originally, a 0.2-second domain expansion could completely crush the domain amplification of a cursed spirit on Hanami's level and hard CC it for 5 minutes without causing serious harm to ordinary people. However, Ryomen Sukuna's strength was far greater than Hanami's, so the control time would be correspondingly shortened, which forced Satoru Gojo to speed up in dealing with the transfigured humans. The reverse curse technique, originally used to treat curse technique burnout and shorten the recovery time, was also cancelled by Satoru Gojo, so he could focus wholeheartedly on removing the heads of the transfigured humans one by one. Around 3.5 minutes in, Sukuna had processed most of the junk information in his head, and began to gradually regain control of his body. As soon as he regained consciousness, he immediately launched a slash at the busy Satoru Gojo. Satoru Gojo, who was in the period of cursed technique burnout, could not use Limitless at all. He could only take it head-on with fists covered in cursed energy. Without the bonus of the Limitless curse technique, his cursed energy consumption had returned to a normal state, and under such high-intensity movements, the consumption was slightly large. Enduring Ryaman Sukuna's slashes while clearing over 1,000 transfigured humans at high speed took Satoru Gojo about 4 minutes. After finishing the cleanup, fine beads of sweat appeared on his head, and he was panting slightly. "Phew, pretty capable, aren't you, curse spirit? But this is as far as you go." Currently, only Ryaman Sukuna could act normally, so Satoru Gojo wanted to seize the opportunity to directly exorcise the other 3 cursed spirits. Although he could not use his cursed technique for the time being, he was still very confident in his own strength. Just then, a small cube was tossed at his feet from behind, and at the same time, that familiar yet strange voice came from behind him. "Oh, long time no see, Satoru." Upon hearing Kenjaku's words, Satoru Gojo felt no emotion of reuniting with an old friend, only anger at his best friend's body being insulted. He kicked the prison realm at his feet away, turned around, and smashed a fist into Kenjaku's face. "Don't call me that, using Ghetto's body." Bang! Although Kenjaku immediately raised his arms to block, he was still sent flying backward, his arms broken by Satoru Gojo's furious punch. When Kenjaku was sent flying by Satoru Gojo, a look of astonishment still remained on his face as he muttered, "Impossible! How could this be? How could my plan have such a huge error?" After blasting him away with one punch, Satoru Gojo didn't even care about the 4 people behind him. He stepped forward, followed up, and smashed another fist at Kenjaku's head. "You get out of Ghetto's body." Chapter 71, Immortal Technique, Assimilation. Ryaman Sukuna immediately rushed forward to intercept Satoru Gojo, pulling Kenjaku to a safe place. The other 3 cursed spirits gradually regained consciousness, collectively shielding Kenjaku and Ryaman Sukuna behind them. Kenjaku had just finished releasing their domain, and was temporarily in a state of curse technique burnout, so the attempt to seal Satoru Gojo had failed, and they had no choice but to find a way to escape. Hanami clenched their fists and looked at the 2 cursed spirits beside them. "Mahito. Dagon. You 2 leave first. I will hold off Satoru Gojo. After all, he cannot use his cursed technique right now, and cannot do anything to me." With that, Hanami directly initiated domain expansion. Domain expansion, Disaster Gardens. The massive domain instantly enveloped Satoru Gojo and a large group of ordinary people. Outside the domain, Kenjaku kept pondering where things had gone wrong. Ryaman Sukuna weighed the pros and cons. He wanted to immediately expand his domain to try and finish off Satoru Gojo, who was temporarily unable to use his curse technique, but he feared that if he couldn't take Satoru Gojo down quickly, the swarm of bugs outside the curtain would notice the anomaly and storm in. Therefore, he chose to leave with Kenjaku first, planning to take action only after assimilating Tengen, and evolving his life level a few times using the immortal technique. "Go!" Ryaman Sukuna grabbed Kenjaku and broke through the curtain, leaving rapidly without caring about Mahito and Dagon who were present. Seeing Sukuna and Kenjaku fleeing, Mahito gritted his teeth, and dragged Dagon along, trying to follow. Dagon, however, stood rooted to the spot, reluctant to leave as it gazed at Hanami's domain. It didn't want to go, it wanted to wait there for Hanami to join them. "Dagon, let's go. Hanami will be able to finish off Satoru Gojo and catch up soon. After all, that Satoru Gojo can't even use his curse technique right now." Dagon's intelligence was still relatively low, much like a human child, and Mahito was its older brother, so Dagon listened to Mahito. Although it was still reluctant to leave Hanami, it followed Mahito away from the station. Inside Hanami's domain, Satoru Gojo deployed a simple domain to counter Hanami's guaranteed hit effect while simultaneously activating the reverse curse technique to continue shortening his burnout period. Hanami's attacks could not inflict any effective damage on Satoru Gojo, so it could only rely on the domain to stall for time against him. Bang! Satoru Gojo threw another punch, snapping the branches on Hanami's face, and causing it to violently spit out a mouthful of purple blood. The branches on your face are quite brittle. You're a cursed spirit specialized in defense, yet you leave yourself with such an obvious weakness. While speaking, Satoru Gojo punched Hanami again, sending it spinning 720 degrees in the air before it landed. Hanami's domain might as well not have been active, it was being unilaterally pummeled by Satoru Gojo. Curse technique, restored. Sensing that his curse technique had been restored, Satoru Gojo immediately expanded his domain again. As for the surrounding ordinary people, they were no longer important. He only wanted to drag out the bastard who had usurped Suguru Geto's body, take him to Kagura-shin, and torture him to death countless times. Domain expansion, unlimited void. Hanami's domain was instantly crushed by Satoru Gojo's domain. The ordinary people in the surrounding station were squeezed even tighter by the unlimited void, which was a size larger than Hanami's domain. Inside the unlimited void, Hanami stood motionless as its brain was flooded with excessive amounts of garbage information. Satoru Gojo simply raised his finger and softly chanted, Phase, Permitha, Pillar of Light, Curse Technique Reversal, Red. A massive red instantly blasted Hanami into nothingness. Shortly after, the domain was dispelled, and the other four had long since fled without a trace. Satoru Gojo stood in place, looking in the direction where Kenjaku had just called his name, and fell silent. If it weren't for Shin telling me about the guy who usurped your body, I would definitely have been sealed. Because even if I know he isn't you, I cannot suppress the memories of us. Geto. Satoru Gojo picked up the prison realm he had kicked away earlier, and left the station, which was filled with severed limbs and blood, without looking back. The four of them, Kenjaku and the others, who had fled back to their rental, were in very low spirits. Kenjaku felt it was unacceptable due to the serious errors in their plan, while Mahito and Dagon were saddened by the news of Hanami's death. Once Kenjaku's curse technique was restored, he finally perked up a little. Prepare for assimilation. Sukuna. After the assimilation ritual ended, Ryaman Sukuna opened his eyes again. He sensed his current body and couldn't help but reveal a satisfied smile. He he he. Ha ha ha. Immortal technique, is it? Interesting. Does the body automatically evolve when threatened with death? Tingin's immortal technique was somewhat similar to Maharaga's technique, both reacted to damage. However, Maharaga was more like a walkthrough that gradually unlocked the correct strategy. As long as you followed the guide, you were guaranteed to clear the stage. But the immortal technique was just purely about evolving and getting stronger. As for whether it was the correct way, never mind that, just look at whether it got stronger or not. Seeing that Ryaman Sukuna had successfully assimilated Tengen, Kenjaku gradually released all the special-grade cursed spirits from their cursed spirit manipulation for him to assimilate, blindly stacking stats for Ryaman Sukuna. At first, Sukuna's body would be blown to pieces due to the conflict of cursed energy, but after his physical body evolved a few times, he could easily contain these cursed spirits. Kenjaku also took out a set of dentures that had been kept for a long time, and handed them to Ryaman Sukuna. Try this cursed object. Its cursed technique allows it to devour everything and make it its own. It's just that no body has ever been able to withstand it, but with your immortal technique, bearing its power shouldn't be a problem. Hashtag 72 Chapter 72 The Storm is Brewing. Chapter 72, Gathering Storm. Ryaman Sukuna shoved the cursed object directly into his mouth, but the power he expected from the powerful cursed technique merging with his body did not come. Instead, three masses of cursed energy with different properties rampaged through his body. However, having long since assimilated various cursed objects and cursed spirits, Ryaman Sukuna naturally assimilated them all into his body with ease. How is it? This cursed technique isn't bad, right? No, you have been deceived. This cursed object is a fake, just three ordinary special-grade cursed objects mashed together like modeling clay. An ordinary person would naturally die, After all, enduring 3 types of cursed energy at the same time is indeed impossible. Kenjaku's expression darkened instantly, but there was no time to blame himself for his own stupidity. It was better to focus on strengthening Ryomen Sukuna as quickly as possible. As a continuous stream of cursed spirits and cursed objects were devoured by Ryomen Sukuna, his body began a new round of autonomous evolution in order to survive under such chaotic cursed energy. The weak vessel originally prepared by Kenjaku gradually twisted, and a large amount of complex cursed energy seeped out, forming a shell-like protection around his body. The evolution did not last long, and soon the cursed energy shell shattered under a violent bombardment of cursed energy, revealing a brand new body. This brand new body had 3 heads and 6 arms like an Asura, and its facial appearance had departed from that of a human, becoming closer to the yokai with blue faces and fangs from legends. Its body was covered in black cursed marks, making him look even more evil. Sukuna admired his new physical body and couldn't help but nod with satisfaction. Heh heh. This body is what I call decent. Such cursed energy and various cursed techniques, what a wonderful feeling. On the Jujutsu world side, due to Tengen's death, the barriers throughout Japan began to become unstable, and many Jujutsu sorcerer strongholds that were originally hidden by veils were revealed due to the destruction of the barriers. After all, a veil is just a small barrier created by relying on Tengen's barrier. Gojo Satoru also looked grim after learning that Tengen had been abducted. After all, Tengen's importance in the Jujutsu world was like that of optical camouflage and satellites in modern warfare. The current Jujutsu world was completely exposed to ordinary people and various curse users, and it was impossible to receive any intelligence. At this moment, Kagura Shin also poked his head out from a portal. He had originally been inside the culling game barrier, but after only a few hours, the barrier slowly showed signs of collapse, and after a while, it completely collapsed, having no restrictive effect on Kagura Shin at all, so he teleported back directly. Did something happen to Tengen? Things are becoming increasingly absurd. The culling game was also built on the foundation of Tengen's barrier. When Tengen's 4 main pure barrier centers were completely destroyed, the culling game would naturally collapse. The 4 main pure barrier centers had a close connection to Tengen's life. After Tengen, who possessed the immortal technique, died, lost consciousness, the pure barrier centers naturally collapsed slowly, which in turn led to the collapse of the culling game barrier. That is why Kagura Shin was able to return to Jujutsu High now instead of waiting for 3 days. It is estimated that from the very beginning, Kenjaku's goal was just to temporarily trap Kagura Shin so that he could proceed with his plan normally. Of course, he also knew that the barrier would not collapse immediately after Tengen lost consciousness, which is why Kenjaku dared to kill Tengen directly. And now that Sukuna possessed Tengen's abilities and memories, it meant that when the barriers were deployed again, all the barriers in Japan would belong to the cursed spirit side. Sukuna could even manipulate the flow of cursed energy throughout Japan. Gojo-sensei, things have gotten serious. If that guy Kenjaku uses cursed spirit manipulation to control Master Tengen, we will be in a very passive position. Gojo Satoru nodded with a heavy expression and said, that is indeed the case. Shin, give Yuta a call and ask him to return to the country. Later, come with me to the casino to find Hikari. I feel like the battle for survival between Jujutsu sorcerers and cursed spirits is coming soon. Oh. Senior Yuta and Senior Hikari. They are indeed reassuring reinforcements. However, I think I can handle Ryomen Sukuna by myself, there's no need to trouble them. I know. I'm having them come back to deal with the large number of cursed spirits controlled by the curse technique of that guy who occupied Geto Sugiru's body. Among them, there are quite a few special grade cursed spirits. It will be more reassuring to have them back. As for Ryomen Sukuna, if the 2 of us go together, he won't have a chance to win. While Gojo Satoru was speaking, Kagura Shin stared intently at his mouth, ready to reach out and cover it at any moment, fearing that Gojo Satoru would suddenly blurt out, I will win. Although he was very confident in his own strength, for some reason, he always had some psychological trauma regarding those 3 words. There is only one update today because the author has gastroenteritis, is vomiting, and has diarrhea, and is still in the hospital receiving an for drip. I apologize. Chapter 73, Hikari and Hoshi. Satoru Gojo and Kagura Shin arrived together at an underground casino in Tokyo. In the center of the casino, there was a huge fighting ring. This was the underground casino run by Kinji Hikari and Hoshi Kirara. Besides gambling, it also featured illegal fights between jujutsu sorcerers. If anything, this business was the biggest highlight of the casino. Oh! When the two entered, a match had just concluded in the ring. The spectators who had won were naturally cheering and roaring, while those who had lost were full of frustration and unwillingness, immediately starting the next round in hopes of winning back their losses. Satoru Gojo scanned the area with his 6 eyes, then pointed to a room and said to Kagura Shin, "Hikari is over there, let's head straight over." Satoru Gojo took Kagura Shin with him, kicked the door open, and greeted the two people drinking inside. "Yo Kinji, Kirara, long time no see." One of the people in the room was a tall young man, muscular and sturdy, giving off a sense of power. His hair was dyed gold and combed back, quite unique. One look and you could tell he was a delinquent. His purple-red eyes were small and sharp, his eyebrows thin and long, and he had faint stubble that formed a thin mustache. He wore a white tank top, an outer black fur coat, gray pants, and light-colored boots, perfectly fitting his demeanor as a casino boss. The other was a slim individual wearing a light-colored, off-shoulder crop top with black straps and a spiked collar around their neck. On their lower body, they wore loose black pants, 2 white belts around their waist, dark high heels, and even had piercings under their lip of a cross-dresser. It was none other than Kinji Hikari and his boyfriend, Hoshi Kirara. Satoru Gojo sat down in front of the two with Kagura Shin, and Hoshi Kirara poured each of them a drink. "Gojo-sensei, what brings you to the casino to hang out today?" "I'm not here to hang out. I came today to invite you both back to Tokyo Jujutsu High. The jujutsu world is about to be turned upside down." Satoru Gojo explained the difficult situation the jujutsu world was facing, and also told them the news about Tengen's incident. After hearing this, Hoshi Kirara looked at Kinji Hikari with concern, while Kinji Hikari closed his eyes in contemplation. After a while, he spoke slowly. "Gojo-sensei, you should know that the current jujutsu world isn't worth saving. I don't think it's a bad thing to let the Kenjaku and Sukuna you mentioned cleanse the entire higher UPS of the jujutsu world. Gojo-sensei, you could completely rally capable and convicted jujutsu sorcerers to your side and create an entirely new jujutsu world. If you need me at that time, I certainly won't refuse. However, if you're asking me to protect this already rotten jujutsu world, please allow me to refuse." A reader mentioned earlier that Kinji Hikari and Satoru Gojo have a bad relationship, but in fact, Kinji Hikari still respects Satoru Gojo because they share the same goal, to change this corrupt jujutsu world. It's just that Satoru Gojo cultivates strong and reliable allies to replace the higher UPS, while Kinji Hikari wants to use violence to overthrow them. Satoru Gojo seemed to have expected Kinji Hikari to say this. He leaned back, resting his arms on the chair, and said, "Is that so? Then let's decide this in the way you like best. Let's make a bet. If you lose, you come back to Tokyo Jujutsu High with me. If you win, we'll immediately cleanse all the higher UPS of the current jujutsu world together. How about that? Not bad, right? Of course, I won't bet against you, that would be bullying you a bit. Let's have this first-year student next to me gamble against you. Higher UPS, you're amazing, you're high-minded, using my life as a bet." This generous stake made Kinji Hikari somewhat tempted. Did he really not want to be a jujutsu sorcerer? Not at all, he just simply couldn't stand the current higher UPS of the jujutsu world. Like Satoru Gojo, he desperately hoped for a thriving jujutsu world. Furthermore, the guy next to Satoru Gojo clearly looked like a novice who had never set foot in a casino. The advantage was his. So he took the bet. Kinji Hikari and Hoshi Kirara brought the two to a luxury private room, where the original guests were grabbed by the collar and thrown out directly by Kinji Hikari. "Then let's roll dice. 2 chips each. Losing all chips counts as a loss. As long as I don't catch you, you can cheat as much as you want. And I'll even let you shake the dice, Gojo-sensei. Satoru Gojo declined, no need, let Kirara do it. I'm not good at this sort of thing. Satoru Gojo was deliberately letting Kagura-shin take the stage. After all, although his 6 eyes were extremely sensitive to objects containing cursed energy, and could even use abilities similar to X-ray vision, once faced with something completely devoid of cursed energy, the 6 eyes were left with only extremely high observational skills and could not see the dice inside the cup at all. But Kagura-shin was different. First, Kagura-shin could use his age and appearance to confuse his opponent. Second, and most importantly, although Kagura-shin didn't know what the number in the cup was, he could make it whatever number he wanted. Satoru Gojo couldn't even imagine how Kinji Hikari would win. In his heart, he was already cackling, heh heh heh. Hashtag 74 Chapter 74 Kamikaze Nobu's Great Victory. Chapter 74, A Great Victory for Kagura-shin. Kagura-shin and Kinji Hikari sat on opposite sides of the gambling table, while Hoshi Kirara pushed the dice cup and 3 dice toward Kagura-shin, letting him inspect them first. Kagura-shin pushed the items straight back and said, I trust you, Senior Kirara, no need to inspect them. In reality, Kagura-shin was a complete layman, who had no idea what he was doing. He only knew that he could bet on big or small, or directly bet on the total points. He didn't know anything else. At some point, Kinji Hikari had produced a handful of small steel balls that kept sliding from his hand onto the gambling table before being snatched back up, while Kagura-shin pulled a keychain-sized command block from his pocket, tossed it in his hand, and gently placed it on the gambling table. Gojo Satoru naturally noticed that what Kinji Hikari held was a creation of his curse technique, but he didn't say a word. After all, if Kinji Hikari's wasn't Kagura-shin's also one? Although both men appeared motionless on the surface, they had actually already begun making subtle moves. Alright, let's begin. Rattle, rattle. Hoshi Kirara shook the dice cup rhythmically, clearly allowing Kinji Hikari to discern the dice's value through his sense of hearing, while a novice like Kagura-shin naturally couldn't tell. Thump. The dice cup was placed steadily on the table, and both sides began to place their bets. Kinji Hikari said to Kagura-shin, you go first, after all, I am your senior. Kagura-shin, naturally unreserved, casually threw a chip onto all same, winning if all 3 dice are the same, and Kinji Hikari also placed a chip on the all same spot. Open, 3 ones. Hoshi Kirara and Kinji Hikari both narrowed their eyes. Clearly, the numbers in the cup should have been 2, 3, and 5. Fortunately, Kinji Hikari had placed his bet on the same spot as Kagura-shin to test his skill, otherwise, he would have lost the first round. Of course, there was no dealer in this game. Hoshi Kirara was just the one shaking the dice, so this round could only be ruled a draw. Following this, for 5 consecutive rounds, Kagura-shin continued to bet on all same. Likewise, Kinji Hikari placed his bets with him every time, but as the number of rounds increased, Kinji Hikari realized that Kagura-shin's abilities were extraordinary. Because after 6 rounds of betting, the numbers in the cup had appeared in sequence from 3 ones up to 3 sixes, anyone with common sense would know something was wrong. A curse technique that can change the outcome of the dice. It's truly difficult to defeat. Looking at the deadlock, Kagura-shin suggested, Senior Hikari, this stalemate isn't going anywhere. How about this, let's both go all out and show our abilities, then decide the winner in one final round. Of course, this time we'll both write our bets on paper to avoid influencing each other. If it's still a draw, I'll consider myself the loser. Kinji Hikari squeezed the small steel ball in his hand and said, I'm really being looked down upon. Hoshi Kirara took paper and a pen, handed them to the two, and began shaking the dice again. While Hoshi Kirara was still shaking the cup, Kagura-shin had already finished writing on his paper, which made Kinji Hikari's eyes narrow. Thump. The dice cup was placed on the table again. Kinji Hikari lowered his head to write his answer, but as he let go, the 3 dice quickly slid into his clothes through his sleeve. Change the result. Let's test our reaction speeds. The brain takes about 0.2 seconds to react. Can you react in the instant the dice cup is opened and I change the numbers? Personal headcanon. Hikari's curse technique allows him to swap small steel balls with gambling tools within a certain range at will, and manipulate the steel balls by transforming them into various gambling tools. Of course, this is a relatively weak application. The dice cup was lifted, and the 3 dice inside were 4, 5, and 6, exactly the 3 numbers Kinji Hikari had produced in the final 0.2 seconds. This made him breathe a sigh of relief, and he couldn't help but look forward to the scene of him cleaning up those higher UPS. He threw the note in his hand onto the table and said, "I won. It seems my luck is a cut above." Hoshi Kirara glanced at the number on Kinji Hikari's note, and his pupils shook in shock. Just as he wanted to warn Kinji Hikari, Kagura Shin also threw his note onto the table. "I'm sorry, Senior Hikari, but I won this round." Kagura Shin's note clearly and unmistakably had the numbers 4, 5, and 6 written on it. Only then did Hoshi Kirara warn, "Hey, second-born, what you wrote is 3 sevens." Kinji Hikari stood up abruptly and grabbed the note. On it 3 large 7s were clearly written, and he was certain that this was his own handwriting. He crumpled the note into a ball and sighed helplessly, "Ah. I've been played. I didn't expect that this time, instead of swapping the dice numbers, you swapped my note. No, this isn't an ordinary swap. This is twisting reality itself. I lost." Chapter 75, Hokkaido Incident. Kinji Hikari was a man who stood by his bets. After losing to Kagura Shin, he immediately converted everyone's chips in the casino into money, and then threw them, along with their money, out of the casino. After packing up their belongings, Kinji Hikari and Hoshi Kirara, along with Satoru Gojo and Kagura Shin, took a portal directly back to Jujutsu High. As soon as they arrived at Jujutsu High, Ijichi Kiyotaka hurried up to Kagura Shin and Satoru Gojo and said anxiously, "Mr. Gojo, Mr. Kagura, something has happened in Hokkaido. A massive barrier has suddenly appeared there, covering the entire island of Hokkaido. Special grade sorcerer Yuki Tsukumo has already set off for Hokkaido. But Master Tengen has already departed, so it should be impossible for such a large-scale barrier to be deployed in Japan now." Kagura Shin frowned and thought to himself, "Something isn't right. Hokkaido isn't even within the range of Master Tengen's barrier. Even if Kenjaku has fully mastered Master Tengen's barrier techniques, he shouldn't be able to deploy a barrier across the entire Hokkaido region." Satoru Gojo shrugged indifferently. "Hasn't Yuki already gone? Just let her go and investigate. Anyway, even if she dies, Shin can resurrect her, so it doesn't matter. Stay calm, stay calm." That was indeed the logic. If Yuki Tsukumo could handle it, she would resolve it herself, and if she couldn't, she would just die. It wasn't a big problem. However, Kagura Shin's command block resurrection did have some conditions. A part of the resurrected person's body or soul must exist within the range of the command block. Of course, if they died within the range of the command block, there were no requirements. Right now, Kagura Shin still had a finger of everyone he knew inside his ender chest. Although Ijichi Kiyotaka remained very anxious, he could not influence the thoughts of these 2 special-grade sorcerers, so he could only hand the detailed information about the incident to them and temporarily withdraw. Kinji Hikari asked at this moment, "How about I go there with Kirara? We might be able to help a little." "No need. If Yuki can't handle it alone, you 2 won't be of much use either. We still don't know what the goal of those cursed spirits is, so let's stay put for now." On the other side, Yuki Tsukumo took a special plane all the way to the edge of the barrier. Ordinary people couldn't see this barrier, and Yuki Tsukumo encountered no resistance when entering or exiting. Outside the coverage area of the barrier, she first conveyed this information to the people from the window before stepping into the barrier once again. The rampant cursed spirits and ruined buildings she had imagined did not appear, though perhaps it was just because the island of Hokkaido was so large that it hadn't spread to this area yet. She rode her motorcycle speeding along the highways of Hokkaido. Apart from the fact that communication devices were unusable, the people driving around didn't seem to be living any differently than usual. However, after a while, she noticed something strange. All the cars on the road seemed to be driving in one direction, and after following the road for a bit, she found herself stuck firmly in traffic. However, on the entire highway, apart from the roar of car engines, Yuki Tsukumo couldn't even hear a single word of conversation or cursing. Everyone was staring blankly in one direction. Initially, one might have thought it was because they were focused on driving, but now it didn't seem to be the case. Something seems wrong. Could this be the effect of a cursed technique? But how much cursed energy would one need to cover the entire island of Hokkaido with their own curse technique? Or perhaps they are utilizing this barrier. Wouldn't that mean the caster's barrier skill is on par with Master Tengen's? Embedding a curse technique onto an entire barrier works on the same principle as domain expansion. However, to accomplish this while controlling ordinary people and discarding the guaranteed hit and lethal effects, the caster would need high-level barrier techniques and cursed technique proficiency, plus immense cursed energy. No. These requirements are too harsh. Could someone really be capable of this? Yuki Tsukumo got off her motorcycle, wanting to test if her hypothesis was correct. She randomly selected a black Santana, ripped off the car door with one hand, and tossed it aside casually. Even in this situation, the car owner remained unmoved. Simple domain. Yuki Tsukumo immediately deployed a simple domain, encompassing the Santana owner in front of her. Almost instantly, the blank look in his eyes vanished, and he looked around at his surroundings in surprise. Why am I here? I should be at the office. He wanted to say more, but Yuki Tsukumo immediately deactivated the simple domain, causing him to quickly return to a blank state. This is a bit troublesome. It seems this opponent is quite tricky. #76 Chapter 76 99 Pairs of Sunoa. Chapter 76, Yuki Tsukumo vs. Sukuna. Yuki Tsukumo followed the flow of traffic all the way to Sapporo, where she saw a massive altar made of ice in the very center of the city. A large number of humans, like ants, were climbing onto the altar one after another, never to return. Getting closer, Yuki Tsukumo could vaguely make out a pitch-black giant egg, about 3 meters tall, standing atop the altar. Humans walked into the giant egg of their own volition, only to turn into white bones and tumble down the altar. Below, countless weak cursed spirits were constantly moving the skeletons away, but the sheer pile of bones left Yuki Tsukumo horrified. She sensed an unimaginably vast amount of cursed energy within the giant egg, which continued to grow with each human sacrifice. I cannot let this continue. Star Rage, maximum output. The horn suddenly appeared, spontaneously shrinking into a ball, and landing at Yuki Tsukumo's feet. Bang! With a violent kick, Yuki Tsukumo sent the horn hurtling at high speed toward the black giant egg atop the altar. A curse user on the altar, dressed in a kasaya with a bob cut and deep pink eyes, sensed the threat and immediately launched a defensive attack. He raised a hand to his lips and blew softly, causing a massive ice curtain to instantly materialize before him like a fortress wall. As Urom's gender is unknown, he is used. Ice Formation Curse Technique, Frost Calm. Clang! The massive wall formed by Frost Calm held for only an instant against Yuki Tsukumo's attack. After shattering the ice wall, the horn continued straight through, punching a massive hole in the giant egg. However, the giant egg quickly regained its rounded shape, and scale-like keratin layers sprouted across its surface, making it even tougher. Urom leapt down from the altar, landing before Yuki Tsukumo, and raised a hand to fire a sharp ice spike, intending to impale her. Yuki Tsukumo caught the ice spike with her hand, and casually flung it back. Unfortunately, her curse technique only applied to herself and the horn, otherwise, the returned ice spike would have been far more lethal. The horn flew back rapidly and landed in Yuki Tsukumo's hand, transforming into a bone whip. A casual swing of the whip generated a gale force strong enough to leave Urom's hair in complete disarray. Urom, stand down. A sound suddenly emanated from the giant egg, and then about 1/10 of it sloughed off like viscous, hot asphalt, slowly forming the three-headed, six-armed figure of Sukuna on the altar. In an instant, Sukuna moved from the altar to their side. Yuki Tsukumo immediately felt an immense pressure descend upon her, leaving her unable to breathe. Ryaman. Sukuna. Truly the king of curses from a millennium ago. One of Sukuna's faces stared at her for a moment, then shook its head and said, "How pathetic. Is this what a special grade sorcerer amounts to? Too weak." Before the words had even faded, a high-speed slash struck toward Yuki Tsukumo's head, which she barely managed to dodge. Domain expansion, Malevolent Shrine. The foundation of Malevolent Shrine rose from the ground, unleashing indiscriminate slashes against all living and non-living things within a 200-meter radius. Of course, Uram and the altar remained unharmed under his deliberate control. Simple domain. Yuki Tsukumo did not choose to unleash her own domain expansion. First, her closed barrier domain would be completely countered by his open barrier one. Secondly, her strongest offensive measure was not domain expansion, but her ultimate attack, which used her life as a binding vow, the black hole. Therefore, she had to conserve her power to activate her cursed technique. She could not afford to suffer from cursed technique burnout. Although Yuki Tsukumo's simple domain could neutralize the guaranteed hit effect of the slashes, and weaken their impact, the power of the slashes was simply too great. A single slash struck her upper arm, nearly severing it entirely, leaving it hanging by a mere strip of flesh. She could not manage what Gojo Satoru did, simultaneously maintaining a simple domain while performing high-intensity reverse curse technique. She could only slightly divide her focus to activate reverse curse technique to slowly heal her injuries, barely managing to hold on within Sukuna's domain. Boom! Ryaman Sukuna's side pairs of arms formed hand seals, launching an attack against Yuki Tsukumo. Over a dozen typhoons, 2 to 3 meters high, swept toward her from all directions, surrounding her tightly with nowhere to escape. Seeing there was nowhere to hide, Yuki Tsukumo simply activated the black hole. She wasn't afraid of death anymore. Ever since Kagura Shin had resurrected her, her role had been perfectly clear. She was just a firecracker with a bit more firepower. Besides, she trusted that Kagura Shin and Gojo Satoru wouldn't abandon such an infinitely reusable firecracker. Boom! Yuki Tsukumo's body twisted and slowly formed a black hole, or something resembling one, less than a meter in diameter. All surrounding cursed energy and objects were drawn in by the immense suction, serving as nourishment that caused it to slowly expand. Yet, Sukuna remained standing firmly atop the cornerstone of his domain, as immovable as a mountain. A technique that can expand infinitely. I cannot let this continue unchecked. Chapter 77, The Approaching Battle. The portion of power that Sukuna had split off suddenly burst open, forming a curtain of flesh and blood that enveloped the black hole. The powerful force of the black hole tore at his body, while Sukuna was simultaneously using his immortal technique to continuously evolve and fuse with the power of the black hole. In the original location of the black hole, a giant black egg had formed. 2 days later, at Jujutsu High, Gojo Satoru found Kagura Shin, who was busy building experience farms, and said, "Shin, you can try to resurrect that Yuki. She hasn't sent back any news for 2 days, and I suspect something has happened to her." Kagura Shin nodded, took out the severed finger Yuki Tsukumo had left behind from his ender chest, and executed the command /resurrect Yuki Tsukumo. The incomplete finger turned into a cluster of white particles and vanished. Yuki Tsukumo instantly appeared before Gojo Satoru and Kagura Shin. She opened her eyes, saw the two of them, and let out a long sigh of relief. Then, as if remembering something, she said anxiously, quickly have all members with combat capabilities set out. Something happened in Hokkaido. Sukuna is constantly devouring ordinary people, and his power is continuously rising. If we don't stop him, the entire Hokkaido will turn into a dead zone. Gojo Satoru's expression became very grim. He immediately returned to Jujutsu High to assemble everyone, while Kagura Shin collected all the experience points from the experience farms, which had increased to 150 in the last 2 days, before following closely behind. On the playground of Jujutsu High, Gojo Satoru stood at the very front, with Yuki Tsukumo beside him. In front of him, almost half of the high-end combat power of the current Jujutsu world had gathered. Kamo Rin, Kamo Noritoshi, the real body of Kokichi Muta, who had been healed by Kagura-shin using a command, along with his several cursed corpses, Aoi Tadu, and all members of the first, second, and third years of the Tokyo school. The remaining veteran grade 1 sorcerers, such as Zenin Naobito, all stayed behind in Tokyo to prevent the base from being raided. Incidentally, the last trace of cursed energy in Maki's body had also been stripped away by Kagura-shin, making her a complete heavenly tyrant. The cursed techniques of Inumaki Toge and Nobara Kujisaki had also been enhanced by Kagura-shin using commands, further advancing their strength. Panda was even taken apart by Kagura-shin, who stuffed a small command block inside his body, continuously granting him the effects of Strength 3, Speed 3, and Resistance 2. In other words, everyone on the field had at least grade 1 strength. Everyone understands the situation, right? Then, let's move out. Remember, your only objective is to block the other interfering cursed spirits. Leave Sukuna to us for special grades. Let's go. While Fushiguro Megumi was saying goodbye to Tsumaki Fushiguro, Yuta Okatsu was also saying goodbye to Rika Orimoto, who had been resurrected by Kagura-shin. Although Rika Orimoto's soul had already been released by Yuta Okatsu, her remains were still there. So Yuta Okatsu simply took a piece of her remains, and after satisfying the conditions, Kagura-shin resurrected her with a single command. As for where he got it from, everyone understands. Actually, Kagura-shin had also asked Itadori Yuji if he should go ahead and resurrect his grandparents and parents as well, but after some thought, Yuji replied like this, not for now. But after Sukuna and Kenjaku are dealt with and everything has settled, I will have to trouble you, Shin. Outside the Hokkaido barrier, the group drove 5 or 6 cars slowly into the barrier. After all, Sapporo was indeed some distance from the barrier's edge, and they definitely couldn't reach it on foot. What, you say airplane? All control towers have no signal, how could a plane fly? Meanwhile, the slightly smaller giant egg beneath the Sapporo altar seemed to sense something, and began to slowly shrink, forming the appearance of Sukuna. Have so many bugs come? Yuram, go see how the preparations are coming along on Kenjaku's side. Yes, Lord Sukuna. Kenjaku was maintaining this barrier on a platform covered in talismanic charms, next to the altar, while Mahito and Dagon were eating a buffet beside him. Mahito casually squeezed a normal human into the size of a peanut, and threw it into his mouth, storing it as combat reserves, while Dagon swallowed a human in one gulp, chewed casually twice, and spat out a complete skeleton. After arriving, Yuram conveyed Sukuna's words to the three of them. Lord Sukuna has sensed that Jujutsu sorcerers have entered the barrier, and has sent me to ask if everyone is ready. Upon hearing that the Jujutsu sorcerers had arrived, Dagon and Mahito immediately stood up. Mahito placed his hands directly on Yuram's shoulders and asked, Where? Where are those Jujutsu sorcerers? Dagon's eyes couldn't help but start shedding tears again. Hanami. Hanami. Gojo Satoru. Kenjaku opened his eyes and said to the two of them, they will arrive here sooner or later. At that time, you can do whatever you want, but for now calm down. Everything is ready here. We can use the cursed energy of the entire Hokkaido to condense a great cursed spirit at any time. Furthermore, we have also prepared several powerful curse users from past generations, who can be awakened at any time. Hashtag 78 Chapter 78 Reunion of Old Friends. Chapter 78, Reunion of Old Friends. The group from Tokyo Jujutsu High drove quickly to Sapporo, and Gojo Satoru could see the massive, disgusting mass of cursed energy near the altar from a long way off. Oh, so that guy Ryaman Sukuna actually assimilated Master Tengen, huh? The curse technique inside his body is truly complicated and unbearable. No wonder he needs 3 heads. I suppose one head couldn't process so much information. Screech. The cars stopped about a kilometer away from the altar because the surrounding area was packed with ordinary people controlled by Ryaman Sukuna's curse technique, who had come to be sacrificed, making it impossible to drive any further. Kagura-shin asked Gojo Satoru. Gojo-sensei, will so many ordinary people affect your performance? Before that incident in Shibuya, it certainly would have, but now, not anymore. Having said that, Gojo Satoru raised his right hand and made a finger-flicking gesture. Unnumbered polar, bird and declaration, between surface and back, hollow technique, purple. The maximum output purple shot straight toward the altar not far away. The group saw a three-headed, six-armed figure suddenly jump up and unleash a continuous series of slashes at purple, but it did not hinder its forward progress in the slightest. Purple crushed the Ryaman Sukuna blocking its path, and the altar further ahead, plowing a deep trench into the ground that seemed to stretch on forever. The crushed Ryaman Sukuna regenerated his body in mid-air shortly after, and sharp bone spurs had evolved all over his body. Gojo Satoru curled his lip indifferently and said, Master Tengen's curse technique is as unreliable as ever. The direction of evolution has nothing to do with fatal factors, it's just becoming stronger for the sake of it. As they spoke, the group had arrived at a spot less than 100 meters from the altar ruins. Kagura-shin placed a command block on the ground and entered a series of commands. / automatically generate a command block at my feet. When I reach the edge of any command block, / Gojo Satoru, Yuki Tsukumo, Yuta Okatsu, immediately revive on the spot after death, / revive Geto Suguru. Kenjaku, who was standing on the altar ruins, suddenly felt a powerful sense of rejection coming from this body that belonged to Geto Suguru. It was Geto Suguru's soul fighting him for control of the body. Geto Suguru's right hand clamped directly onto his own skull, violently ripping off his skull cap, then grabbed Kenjaku, who had been lording over his brain for so long, and threw him hard onto the ground. His head returned to its original state after a burst of white particles. Hey, you disgusting guy, what have you done while occupying my body? Geto Suguru originally wanted to summon a few special-grade cursed spirits to tear Kenjaku to shreds, but he suddenly realized that the special-grade cursed spirits that had existed in his original curse technique had all been assimilated by Ryaman Sukuna. The remaining Grade 2 or Grade 3 cursed spirits were simply not enough, which made him pause in surprise. Taking advantage of Geto Suguru's moment of surprise, Kenjaku immediately activated the reverse curse technique to restore his own body from 1,000 years ago. He knew that no matter whose body he used, he would be affected by Kagura-shin reviving the original owner of the body, so it was better to just use his own. Kenjaku's original appearance was that of a somewhat sinister-looking young man. The hooked nose and upturned eyes appearing on his face simultaneously made one feel a sense of incongruity. He retreated with his naked body, casually stripped the clothes off an ordinary person to wrap around himself, and looked coldly at Kagura-shin not far away. He knew that as long as Kagura-shin did not die, no matter how many times the others died, it would have no effect on the Jujutsu sorcerer side. Kagura-shin activated a command to teleport Geto Suguru to Gojo Satoru's side. Geto Suguru narrowed his eyes, gently raised his right hand, and greeted Gojo Satoru with a smile. Long time no see. Satoru. Yeah, long time no see. Geto. After greeting each other, the two immediately draped their arms over each other's shoulders and couldn't help but laugh up at the sky, just like in the old days. Ryaman Sukuna, naturally, would not commit suicide to celebrate their reunion. His left and right pairs of hands formed different hand seals, while the middle pair of hands condensed a long arrow of fire. Hey! Do you think I don't exist? Jujutsu sorcerer. Open. Whoosh. A long arrow of fire shot at high speed toward the group from Tokyo Jujutsu High. In the original story, the explosion of the fire arrow from a Ryaman Sukuna, who wasn't even in his prime, was enough to instantly exorcise Jogo, and the current power was even greater than that. Boom! A huge pillar of fire 100 meters high rose from the ground, and the violent explosion even produced a mushroom cloud. All the glass within several kilometers was completely shattered by the shockwave of this move. The power was evident. However, when the thick smoke dissipated, Ryaman Sukuna saw a stone pillar still standing in the center of the huge crater blasted out by Open, and the group from Tokyo Jujutsu High on top of the stone pillar didn't even have a speck of dust on them. / kill Ryaman Sukuna. Chapter 79, Battle. Sukuna, who was floating in midair, suddenly went black before his eyes and lost consciousness, falling straight down from the sky. As he fell, his body gradually turned into ashes. However, the moment he completely dissipated, Satoru Gojo suddenly looked up into the distance. Oh! Shin, how many more times can you use that move from just now? Kagura Shin glanced at his experience bar. The kill command he had just used consumed a full 3,000 levels. Fortunately, he had 150 experience farms constantly providing him with experience points, otherwise, he would have run out of experience points after just a few uses. Without any extra consumption, I can only use it 6 times a day. However, in extreme situations, using it 20 times shouldn't be a problem. Satoru Gojo nodded and said, "Very good. That guy Sukuna isn't fully dead yet." The moment this Sukuna died, I detected a fluctuation of cursed energy from Sukuna, in a place beyond the range of your curse technique. I guess that guy has prepared quite a few spare bodies. Kagura Shin shook his head helplessly and said, "Is it that old trick of soul clones again? Doesn't he ever get tired of it?" The principle of this method is to strip a portion of power and soul from the main body and keep them in a dormant state. Before the main body dies, this separated soul clone is no different from being dead, but after the main body dies, the soul clone will inherit the memories and revive. However, this way, the main body's cursed energy and soul power will both weaken. How should I put it? This method is generally pretty stupid. But for dealing with someone like Kagura Shin, whose curse technique information is vague, sacrificing a bit of power to extract information is perfect. Whoosh! Just as Satoru Gojo was talking to Kagura Shin, a horizontal slash tens of meters long flew over from the distance, intending to cut everyone in half. Kagura Shin immediately issued a command to clear the area of all irrelevant personnel. Slash excluding Kagura Shin, Satoru Gojo, Yuki Tsukumo, Yuto Okatsu, and Sukuna, all living beings within the coverage area of the command block are teleported to the very edge of the command block. In an instant, the surroundings cleared up. Kagura Shin put on his anti-Sukuna armor and charged straight toward the slash. The moment the slash touched the armor enchanted with the reflect everything effect, it simply vanished, and Sukuna in the distance was cut in half by his own slash. The biggest difference between the reflect everything effect and thorns is that it reflects the characteristics of the attack as well. For example, if the opponent's attack has a kill instantly characteristic, then the reflected attack also has that characteristic, whereas the thorns effect simply has a probability of causing damage to the opponent when receiving damage. And Sukuna's cursed energy core was clearly different, and not in his abdomen. Rather, his entire body was covered with dense, intricate cursed techniques. Every part of his body was a cursed energy core, so he could quickly restore his original state even after being cut in half. Hee hee ha ha ha. What's wrong? Won't you kill me again? Or is it that you want to kill me but can't? Is it because your curse technique has a range limit? Ha 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 ha. The effective range of my slash is much larger than your curse technique. As long as I am not in your range, you can't do anything to me. Kagura Shin did not speak, but silently issued a new set of commands. Slash generate command block automatically expands outward command block hidden. Disable visual effects, disable collision volume. He wore an anxious expression on the surface, but in reality, he was constantly sensing the expansion results of the command block. Gojo-sensei, I'll have to trouble you to teleport me to Sukuna's side. I think such a short distance is nothing to you, right? Of course. There's no way he can react to it. Satoru Gojo reached out and placed his hand on Kagura Shin's shoulder, instantly disappearing from the spot with him. When Satoru Gojo disappeared, Sukuna in the distance knew this body was about to be gone again. Sure enough, Kagura Shin used another command to destroy this body as well. Further away, one of Sukuna's soul clones awakened. Now, a trace of gravity appeared on his face. Although he had the immortal technique and could have endless clones, if he couldn't crack Kagura Shin's curse technique, no matter how many soul clones he had, it was just serving himself up on a platter. And this revived body couldn't escape the detection of the 6 eyes, so it could only be forced to serve itself up. Although he was definitely at a disadvantage now, he couldn't skip any of the required trash talk. This is what you call despising the enemy tactically, while respecting the enemy strategically. It's useless. Possessing the immortal technique, I have countless clones. Even if the strength of my remaining clones can't even defeat an ordinary person, I, possessing the immortal technique, will constantly evolve. I have hundreds, thousands, or even tens of thousands of years to become stronger, while you only have a short 100 years. You will never be able to defeat me in the end. After listening to this, Kagura-shin suddenly realized something. That's right. I almost forgot. Thanks for the reminder. Well then. Strip Sukuna of the immortal technique. Hashtag 80 Chapter 80, not immortal. Although this body of Ryaman Sukuna was at least 500 meters away from Kagura-shin, he was actually already well within the coverage range of the expanding command block. However, after issuing this command, Kagura-shin suddenly discovered that his experience bar was plummeting. This shouldn't have been happening. He had previously attempted to strip away Gojo Satoru's 6 eyes and Limitless, combined, those two only required 30,000 levels of experience, yet stripping away just one immortal technique had burned through 40,000 levels of Kagura-shin's experience. Could the performance of the immortal technique be higher than the 6 eyes plus Limitless? Although its upper limit was indeed no limit, the time required was simply too vast. All things considered, Kagura-shin felt it wasn't as good as the 6 eyes combined with Limitless. Looking at his remaining 8,000 levels of experience, Kagura-shin suddenly felt a bit nervous. The instant kill command was likely unusable now, but he could attempt to trap Ryaman Sukuna temporarily and finish him off once he had sufficient experience points. Sure enough, the moment Ryaman Sukuna's immortal technique was stripped away, several powerful traces of cursed energy and souls flew over from the distance and merged together. The arrogant expression on Ryaman Sukuna's face vanished instantly, replaced by sheer gravity, and cold sweat involuntarily beaded on his forehead. Previously, he had only dared to act so recklessly in front of Kagura-shin by relying on his numerous clones, but now, although his strength had surged several times over, he had lost his greatest reliance. He admitted that he was afraid now, afraid that Kagura-shin's unreasonable curse technique would kill him instantly. Kagura-shin was also starting to panic. If only Ryaman Sukuna had given him one more day, he could guarantee he would teach Ryaman Sukuna a lesson, but now. Neither side moved, and the battle remained at a stalemate. Meanwhile, on the other battlefield, Fushiguro Megumi, Itadori Yuji, Kamo Noritoshi, and Geto Suguru were facing off against Kenjaku. Nobara Kujisaki and Yoshino Junpei were facing off against Mahito. Kokichi Muta, along with his pile of cursed corpses, Panda, and Inumaki Toge, were facing off against Dagon. Kinji Hikari and Hoshi Kirara were facing off against Uram. Maki Zenin was facing off alone against the curse users resurrected by Kenjaku, Ishigori Ryu, and Yuro Takako. Tadu Aoi and Kamo Rin were facing off against the two autonomous Shikigami of Dhruv Lakdawala, while Dhruv himself was hidden somewhere unknown. Although Geto Suguru's cursed spirit manipulation was effectively half useless since he didn't have any powerful cursed spirits, he could still rank as a grade 1 Jujutsu sorcerer based on his physical combat skills alone, so no matter how you looked at it, Jujutsu High held the absolute advantage. Kamo Noritoshi glared fixedly at Kenjaku, clenched his fists, and demanded, "Hey, whenever you parasitize someone, you always leave stitches on their head, right? 150 years ago, did you parasitize a Jujutsu sorcerer from the Kamo family?" Named Kamo Noritoshi. Itadori Yuji scratched his head in confusion and said, "Kamo Noritoshi. Was there someone named Kamo Noritoshi 150 years ago too?" The pronunciation of Kamo Noritoshi and Kamo Noritoshi is identical. Kamo Noritoshi certainly had no time to answer Itadori Yuji's confusion. He just glared fixedly at Kenjaku in front of him. "Ah, are you a member of the Kamo family? Come to think of it, I did indeed use a body from the Kamo family 150 years ago." I also remember that I seemed to be trying to create a new body for Ryaman Sukuna during that period, but I failed after 9 experiments. This is why Kachizu and Eso both have 2 faces. I have reason to suspect that there is another face on Choso's body as well. Upon hearing Kenjaku's admission, Kamo Noritoshi's cursed energy surged instantly. The stain of the big 3 families, the disgrace of the Kamo family, today, right here. It ends. Blood manipulation, cleave. Standing to the side, Itadori Yuji didn't know why, but a scene suddenly flashed through his mind. A woman fleeing for her life in the deep mountains, arriving before a temple. The woman knocked on the temple gate, and a man wearing monk's robes walked out from within, but on his forehead was a hideous set of stitches. The man in monk's robes opened the temple gate and enthusiastically ushered the woman into the temple for refuge, and then the temple gate slowly closed. "Mother, don't go." Not knowing why, Itadori Yuji suddenly spoke these words that left him bewildered. Afterward, Choso, who had remained silent inside Itadori Yuji's body all this time, uncharacteristically transmitted a message to Itadori Yuji. "Sorry, little brother, we have tried our best to suppress the fluctuations of our souls, but we have still caused you trouble. Little brother, I beg you, you must kill the man in front of you. Of course, if you can expand your domain, and let us slaughter him with our own hands, that would be even better." Although he didn't know why, Itadori Yuji could feel the boundless rage in Choso's words, and he nodded firmly. "Don't worry, big brother. I will definitely slaughter him." Domain Expansion, Benevolent Coexistence. Chapter 81, The Second Domain. On the other side, Sukuna also sensed something was wrong, as Kagura Shin and Gojo Satoru did not launch the high-spirited combo technique he had anticipated. Instead, they slowly retreated to the side of Yuki Tsukumo and Yuta Okatsu. He seemed to suddenly realize something, and a wicked smile appeared on each of his 3 faces. "Ha ha ha ha. What's wrong, Jujutsu Sorcerer? Is your curse technique temporarily unusable? Open." Although he already had a suspicion, Sukuna still did not dare to approach Kagura Shin easily. After all, he couldn't be sure if Kagura Shin was intentionally feigning weakness to lure him in before hitting him with something massive. Thus, Sukuna continued to release his curse technique from a distance to slowly confirm his suspicion. A blazing fire arrow shot at high speed toward the 4 people in the distance. Kagura Shin took out a splash potion of fire resistance and smashed it onto the ground, granting all 4 of them the fire resistance effect. They tanked the fire arrow without taking any damage. Gojo Satoru placed his hands on the shoulders of Yuki Tsukumo and Yuta Okatsu, and in an instant, they arrived beside Sukuna. Kagura Shin, who had been left behind, followed closely behind the 3 with a TP. Once Yuta Okatsu drew near Sukuna, he immediately drew the katana at his waist and slashed at him. Yuki Tsukumo, not to be outdone, smashed her fist, imbued with virtual mass, toward his face. Sukuna's 6 arms instantly turned a metallic color. His 2 left arms clamped onto Yuta Okatsu's katana, his middle 2 arms crossed to forcefully block Yuki Tsukumo's punch, and his 2 right hands formed a seal to launch a counterattack. Dismantle. Countless slashes whistled toward Yuta Okatsu and Yuki Tsukumo, while Gojo Satoru was directly ignored by Sukuna. After all, Gojo Satoru possessed infinity. Attacking him outside of a domain was a complete waste of effort. After the slashes forced Yuta Okatsu and Yuki Tsukumo back, Sukuna saw a basketball-sized red smashing toward his face, while behind him floated dozens of end crystals thrown by Kagura Shin. Boom, boom, boom. The red directly knocked Sukuna back, forcing him to take the full explosive damage of several end crystals. Each end crystal's explosion would blast everything within its range into nothingness, including Sukuna's body, which had evolved at some point to radiate a metallic luster. Boom. Sukuna's mangled body crashed to the ground, but with his incredibly powerful reverse curse technique, he restored his broken frame to its original state almost instantly. Ha 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 ha. What a powerful attack. To think that even my body, evolved through Tengen's curse technique to withstand that red with only minor injuries, was directly annihilated. But why didn't you use that move of yours to kill me instantly? Is it because you can't use it anymore? Domain expansion, malevolent shrine. Pillars rose from the ground and countless slashes descended upon the floor, shredding the ground and surrounding buildings to pieces. Domain expansion, Genesis. Although the range of Sukuna's domain was indeed large, Kagura Shin's domain was even larger, directly encompassing Sukuna's domain within it. However, Kagura Shin did not choose to collide head-on with Sukuna's domain. Instead, he used a binding vow to neutralize his domain's guaranteed hit effect with that of Sukuna's domain. Kagura Shin wasn't confident he could completely dismantle Sukuna's domain with his own. After all, the current Sukuna had assimilated an unknown number of special grade and grade 1 cursed spirits. His cursed energy was terrifyingly vast. Everyone said Yuta Okatsu's cursed energy was infinite and could never be used up, but the current Sukuna's cursed energy reserves were even higher than Yuta Okatsu's. Moreover, Kagura Shin wasn't fighting alone now. He only needed to neutralize the guaranteed hit effect of Sukuna's domain. A mere Sukuna was nothing to fear. However, Sukuna didn't show any look of surprise after his domain was neutralized by Kagura Shin. Instead, the faces on both sides of his head and his hands formed two different sets of seals. Domain expansion, all phenomena of heaven and earth. Boom. The four of them saw a chaotic surge of energy spewing from the four mouths of the pillars in Sukuna's domain: gales, thunder, floods, dust, venom, fire. Almost every dangerous substance found in the world could be found here. A brand new domain expanded once again within the two overlapping large-scale domains, causing even Gojo Satoru to show a shocked expression. How can this be? Everyone has only one innate domain. No matter how many cursed techniques are engraved in the body, it's impossible to have a second form of expression. At most, different techniques would be displayed within the same domain, but that's it. This should be an ironclad rule. Hashtag 82 Chapter 82 Barbarian God. Chapter 82, Banshin. Yes, everyone's innate domain is fixed from birth, and domain expansion is merely using a curse technique as a skeleton and filling it with cursed energy to bring that innate domain into reality. But now Sukuna had expanded a dual domain simultaneously, which meant he currently possessed two innate domains. This suddenly reminded Kagura Shin of how Tengen's immortal technique behaved after assimilating a star plasma vessel. The consciousness of the star plasma vessel assimilated by Tengen does not disappear, it's just that Tengen's consciousness takes the dominant role. Now, Sukuna had assimilated an unknown number of cursed spirits, and the consciousness of a vast number of cursed spirits likely occupied a large part of his own mind. The fragmented innate domains of numerous cursed spirits had fused into a brand new innate domain. If even the innate domain was like this, then what about the primary consciousness? Kagura Shin now doubted whether Sukuna's primary consciousness was truly that king of curses from 1,000 years ago. But now was not the time for such thoughts, as the surroundings were already filled with all sorts of chaotic energies. Simple domain. The four, once again covered by the guaranteed hit effect, had no choice but to temporarily expand their simple domains, looking for an opportunity to get close to Sukuna and pull him into their own closed domains. Piercing blood, supernova. By now, Yuji Itadori's domain was being used very well. Fully expanded, it looked like a massive pitch-black sphere enveloping everyone. At the bottom of the domain's interior was a pool of crimson blood, and surrounding the pool were 10 statues of various shapes. Upon closer inspection, they were full-body statues of Yuji Itadori and all members of the Cursed Womb, death painting. Overall, Yuji Itadori's domain looked more like an oversized hot spring. Choso's figure emerged from the blood pool, raising his hand to fire a supernova. Kenjaku, however, did not choose to use domain expansion to counter Yuji Itadori. He knew that while his domain could crush Yuji Itadori's, Megumi Fushiguro could also expand his domain. Having returned to his own body, Kenjaku could not maintain his domain's integrity if he had to crush two people's domains in succession. Once he fell into curse technique burnout, the still peaking Kamo Noritoshi and Suguru Geto would be a huge problem. Therefore, he could only temporarily use a simple domain to counter Yuji Itadori's domain. His foolproof plan was to first eliminate either Yuji or Megumi Fushiguro before expanding his own domain. Without the guaranteed hit effect, Choso's supernova was easily dodged by Kenjaku, who simultaneously raised his hand to counterattack using blood manipulation. Blood manipulation, 10,000 arrows. A massive number of arrows made of blood rained down upon the four, remaining a very powerful attack even after part of its strength was neutralized by the domain. 10 Shadows Technique, Chimera, Barbarian God. Megumi Fushiguro summoned a rapid escape and used it as a medium to load the power of the other 8 completely destroyed Shikigami onto it, fusing them into a final Shikigami capable of rivaling Maharaga. Thump. A Shikigami over 3 meters tall crashed into the blood pool, kicking up a massive spray. Looking closely, its torso was close to that of a gorilla. It had the arms of tiger burial, the claws of divine dogs, the bulging eyes of a toad, and the long trunk of an elephant on its face. Atop its head were the massive antlers of a round deer, and on the sides of its head, it also grew a pair of ox horns. On its back, 2 pairs of round deer's giant wings were wrapped in bursts of lightning. Its legs were muscular, powerful, and strong. Its entire body was covered in thick fur that radiated a powerful positive cursed energy, demonstrating its formidable defense against ordinary forward curse techniques. Positive cursed energy neutralizes ordinary forward cursed techniques, weakening their power. PSHHH. The Banshin suddenly sprayed a huge torrent of azure water from its long trunk. The high-speed water was even infused with the piercing ox technique and positive cursed energy, instantly scattering the incoming blood arrows. The water's power remained strong, rushing straight towards Kenjaku ahead. Anti-gravity system, rise. The gravity of the water flow was directly nullified by Kenjaku, causing its attack direction to twist straight upwards. However, the Banshin simply gave a slight flap of its wings, and powerful lightning instantly boomed from them, striking Kenjaku's chest and sending him flying back to crash against the shell of Yuji's domain. Yuji Itadori, Choso, and Kamo Noritoshi all activated blood manipulation at the same time. Piercing blood. 3 droplets of blood shot toward Kenjaku's head one after another like high-speed bullets, intending to blow his head clean off. Blood manipulation, crimson shield. Thud thud thud. Kamo Noritoshi's piercing blood was blocked directly by Kenjaku's blood shield, while Yuji Itadori's and Choso's piercing blood pierced through both the shield and Kenjaku's body. However, Kenjaku quickly recovered completely using the reverse curse technique. Not bad at all. Chapter 83, Battlefields Everywhere. Kenjaku already felt the potent toxins from the blood of Choso and Yuji Itadori seeping into his body through his wounds. Therefore, he had to constantly activate his reverse cursed technique to slowly neutralize the toxins while maintaining his simple domain. Otherwise, if Yuji Itadori were to activate his corrosion technique after several accumulations, it would be a massive problem. Before he could finish his tactical assessment, the muscular legs of the Banshin suddenly kicked off, reaching Kenjaku's face in an instant as a heavy beast paw, wrapped in fierce winds, swiped violently at him. Cleave. Kenjaku quickly threw out 2 massive blood shurikens to slash at the Banshin's paw, but the positive cursed energy covering the Banshin's for rapidly neutralized the cursed energy within the cleave. By the time it struck, its power was almost negligible. Bang! Kenjaku was swiped away by the Banshin's paw, and then the Banshin spat 2 basketball-sized water spheres, imbued with the piercing ox technique, toward the direction Kenjaku had been sent flying. Asterisk boom. Boom, asterisk. In truth, if Megumi Fushiguro could withstand Kenjaku's domain, the Banshin alone would be enough to completely defeat Kenjaku. The Banshin's power was simply too immense. If Kenjaku were a cursed spirit of the same level, he would likely have been exorcised by the Banshin's powerful positive cursed energy by now. Unfortunately, Kenjaku is a human, so positive cursed energy has little effect on him. The 10 Shadows technique, as expected of the technique that could result in mutual destruction with a 6 eyes user. If you had been the one facing that former Gojo clan head back then, he might not have been able to take you down with him. Domain expansion, womb perfusion. Although Kenjaku's plan was ideal, wanting to eliminate one of the 2 sorcerers capable of expanding a domain, now he could only gamble with a binding vow. Kenjaku shrank the diameter of his open domain to be exactly 1 meter larger than Yuji Itadori's domain. Through this binding vow, he gained absolute barrier strength and reduced cursed energy consumption. He intended to use the power of the binding vow to attempt to crush both Itadori and Megumi Fushiguro's domains, while keeping his own from being completely destroyed. Domain expansion, Chimera Shadow Garden. Kenjaku's domain and the domains of the two others violently collided. Life or death would be decided in this single moment. Ice apparition technique, ice fall. Domain expansion, idle death gamble. As soon as the battle between Kinji Hikari and Uram began, Hikari told Hoshi Kirara to stay far away and immediately performed a domain expansion. Hikari's domain has no lethal power against the enemies trapped inside, but it allows him to perform infinite lottery draws within the domain. Each draw has a 1/239th chance of hitting the jackpot, but Hikari has a way to cheat, ensuring a jackpot within 30 draws. For 4 minutes and 11 seconds after hitting the jackpot, Hikari possesses infinite cursed energy and automatically uses reverse cursed technique. Simply put, both his mana and health bars temporarily become infinitely long. Furthermore, because he has infinite cursed energy after the jackpot, he remains at his peak even after the jackpot time ends, and can expand his domain again to draw once more. He is an unkillable health tank. As long as you cannot kill him in a single blow, he can wear you down to death. The battle on Maki Zenin's side was much simpler. She brandished Playful Cloud, and Ryu Ishigori and Takako Yuro didn't even dare to face her head-on. No matter which of them it was, if they took a single hit from Playful Cloud, they would be directly beaten into a pile of Playful Cloud effect, no innate technique. The greater the physical strength, the greater the power. Although Panda's group was pulled into Dagon's horizon of the captivating katana, Kokichi Muta had prepared several simple domain capsules before the fight. These allowed the group to remain unaffected by the guaranteed hit effect within Dagon's domain. Combined with the Panda reinforced by Kagura Shin, who was now both tanky and high damage, it was impossible for them to lose. Straw doll technique, hairpin. Bang. One of Mahito's arms was directly ripped off by Nobara Kujisaki. With her technique reinforced by Kagura Shin, she can now freely manipulate nails tainted with her cursed energy. Furthermore, when performing resonance, she doesn't need a body part of the opponent at all. She only needs to have directly touched them to unleash resonance at its maximum output. Mahito, on the other hand, was surrounded by azure jellyfish. If he wasn't careful, he would be tainted by Yoshino Junpei's cursed energy, making both his cursed energy and soul extremely sluggish. Furthermore, Yoshino Junpei and Nobara Kujisaki didn't get close to him at all, so his small radius domain couldn't pull them in for an instant kill. Damn it, mere jujitsu sorcerers. Soul multiplicity, polymorphic isomer. A fusion transfigured human with power comparable to a grade 1 jujitsu sorcerer quickly rushed toward Yoshino Junpei, while Mahito rushed toward Nobara Kujisaki. This was to create a brief one-on-one situation. As long as he could solve one of them, he could break the deadlock. Puff. A large jellyfish exploded over Mahito's head, instantly covering him with a massive amount of anesthetic cursed energy. Domain amplification. Bang. Although Mahito used domain amplification to block the cursed energy from seeping into his body, he took a punch from Nobara Kujisaki square in the face. He touched you. Nobara Kujisaki quickly pulled a straw doll from her vest, then took out a nail and hammered it in fiercely. Straw doll technique, resonance. Puff puff puff. The moment the straw doll was nailed down, several giant nails of cursed energy erupted from Mahito's limbs, chest, abdomen, neck and head. Furthermore, Nobara's resonance can strike the soul directly. With just this one hit, Mahito was already critically injured and on the verge of death. On Dorobu's side, the movement paths of his two independent Shikigami served as his domain. Initially, Aoi Tadu and Kamo Rin did suffer a major setback. However, after learning Dorobu's information, Aoi Tadu alone was able to stall the two Shikigami, while Kamo Rin searched the surroundings for the hidden Dorobu. #80 for Chapter 84 Sealing and Annihilation. Chapter 84, Sealing and Extermination. Horin. The Horin, carrying a massive amount of virtual mass, smashed heavily into Sukuna's face, but it only managed to shatter half of one of his heads. His current defensive power was indeed exaggerated. Only Satoru Gojo's hollow technique and Kagura Shin could cause large-scale damage to him, while the other two could only hold him back. Domain Expansion, Unlimited Void. Satoru Gojo found an opportunity to pull Sukuna directly into his domain. At the moment of being pulled in, Sukuna concentrated all the attacks of his own domain onto the shell of Satoru Gojo's domain, while a pair of hands on his right side formed a seal to activate Hollow Basket. Crack, boom. Under Sukuna's continuous bombardment, Satoru Gojo's domain shell only lasted for 3 seconds before being completely shattered, and Satoru Gojo temporarily fell into a state of curse technique burnout. To be able to activate a simple domain while maintaining 2 types of domains, as expected of the King of Curses. However, after forcibly shattering Unlimited Void, Sukuna's second domain also weakened significantly, and the frequency of attacks the others faced within the domain decreased considerably. Domain Expansion, Authentic Mutual Love. Yuta Okatsu's domain followed immediately, covering Sukuna within it. Kagura Shin remained outside Yuta Okatsu's domain, and during the 3 seconds or so before Yuta Okatsu's domain was shattered, he used a large amount of bedrock to completely enclose both Yuta Okatsu and Sukuna, /teleport Yuta Okatsu to my side. Immediately after his domain shattered, Yuta Okatsu was pulled to the outside of the bedrock egg by Kagura Shin, leaving Sukuna alone inside. No matter how much Sukuna concentrated his domain's power to bombard the bedrock surrounding him, he couldn't budge the bedrock in the slightest. This was the strongest sealing technique in the current Jujutsu world. Kagura Shin placed a command block at both the top and bottom ends of this bedrock sphere to ensure that none of the bedrock would be refreshed away. Kagura Shin knocked on the bedrock wall and asked Sukuna inside. "How is it, King of Curses? Is the space inside wide enough? The temperature should be quite suitable. Just stay in there for a while. Once I've saved up enough experience points, I'll take you out directly." Satoru Gojo also knocked on the bedrock wall, ruthlessly mocking Sukuna. "Ha ha ha, King of Curses. So you're an oviparous creature. Ha 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 ha." Inside the bedrock sphere, Sukuna also used Dismantle and Cleave to continuously slash at the bedrock sphere, but it was useless. Moreover, even though this sphere should clearly still be within his domain, which meant Kagura Shin's curse technique should be neutralized, there was no change at all. He simply deactivated his double domains and focused wholeheartedly on breaking the bedrock in front of him. As for the mocking voices of Kagura Shin and Satoru Gojo, he simply acted as if he hadn't heard them. "Once I get out, the first one I'll kill is you, you blindfolded bastard." Kenjaku's domain, bolstered by a binding vow, did not remain as he had expected after crushing the opponent's 2 domains. Even with the binding vow, he only barely managed to fight them to a draw. Impossible. How could this be? Not long ago your domains were still weak and pathetic. How could they reach this level in just a few days? Yuji Itadori, who had fallen into a curse technique burnout period, curled his lip in disdain and said, "You didn't think you were the only one who could use a binding vow, did you? Shin specifically taught us a move to guard against you. By making a vow that we won't use our domains for a month, we can super strengthen the domain's effects. Shin calls this move Megumi Fushiguro reminded him. Lone Sanctification. Suguru Geto, who was still in his prime, clenched his fists and walked slowly toward Kenjaku with a sinister smile. "Don't look at me just because I don't have any powerful curse spirits right now. I'm still hiding a trump card. Even Satoru doesn't know about this move. Cursed Spirit Manipulation, Sacrifice. This move was a technique created by mimicking Meimei's bird manipulation, burning away a cursed spirit's life force to unleash a superpowerful strike. However, even Suguru Geto could at most only withstand the power generated by burning a grade 2 curse. After all, even an ordinary crow could heavily injure a special grade, let alone a grade 2 curse. Unlike the maximum technique, which merely needs a large number of cursed spirits into a ball and throws them out. This move burns the life and existence of the cursed spirit directly as fuel. Boom! A massive cursed energy cannon instantly blasted toward Kenjaku, who was in cursed technique burnout. He could only use pure cursed energy to resist, but how could such a powerful cursed energy cannon be blocked so easily? It blasted him into flying ash in an instant. Suguru Geto also fell into cursed technique burnout after unleashing this strike. That's why I didn't want to use this move. It's clearly not a domain expansion, yet it still causes cursed technique burnout after use. Chapter 85, Battle Over. Once the few who finished their battles were free, they immediately went to assist the others who were having trouble. Although Satoru Gojo and Yuta Okatsu were currently experiencing cursed technique burnout, the 4 special-grade sorcerers could easily handle ordinary special-grade cursed spirits using only physical combat. Not to mention that Yuki Tsukuma was at nearly full strength, and Kagura Shin had retained all of his combat capabilities, save for those high-consumption commands. The remaining curse users and curse spirits had absolutely no power to fight back. Standing before Dagon's domain, Kagura Shin immediately expanded his own domain, instantly shattering the shell of Dagon's domain to reveal the sun-drenched beach filled with murderous intent inside. On the beach, countless giant piranhas with sharp teeth were biting Mechamaru's mechanical body, while Panda, protected by the simple domain granted by Kokichi Muta, was going back and forth with Dagon in his guerrilla mode. Don't move. While Panda and Dagon were engaged in hand-to-hand combat, Toji Inumaki was on the sidelines, using cursed speech to harass Dagon. Kagura Shin took out a trident shimmering with iridescent light, and tossed it in his hand. The enchantment is the same as the trident used to exorcise Jogo. How is this not a kind of alternative reunion? I really am too kind. Exorcism trident. Whoosh! The high-speed trident instantly struck Dagon's chest, and the powerful positive cursed energy neutralized its body into nothingness. Since the caster was dead, the piranhas that were biting Mechamaru naturally dissipated, leaving behind only Mechamaru, who had been reduced to a pile of scrap metal. After Kagura Shin dispelled his domain, the others had also finished their battles. Except for Mahito, who was still hanging on by a thread, all the other curse users had been dealt with. Why was Mahito still alive? Naturally, because Suguru Geto wanted to absorb it with his curse technique. His special-grade curse spirits had all been used up, and he was in urgent need of replenishment. However, he was still in the period of curse technique burnout, so he kept it for the time being. Suguru Geto was also quite skilled with reverse curse technique. If he used it to heal his curse technique burnout, he would likely recover to normal in a little while. However, even though Kenjaku was already dead and Sukuna was putting all his energy into dealing with the bedrock ball, this massive barrier covering Hokkaido still hadn't dissipated. Instead, the cursed energy of the entire barrier was concentrating here. A vast amount of cursed energy surged in from all directions like a tidal wave, forming a massive cursed energy tornado near the group. In the center of the tornado, it seemed as though something was being born. However, with so many people from Jujutsu High standing there, if they still let it be successfully born, they might as well all just go bang their heads against a block of tofu and die. Horn. Yuki Tsukumo took the lead, kicking the horn towards the center of the cursed energy storm. Although Yuta Okatsu couldn't use his curse technique for the moment, it didn't affect his output of positive cursed energy. A massive positive cursed energy cannon blast went straight into the center of the storm, while Kagura Shin threw out a series of end crystals and a dense barrage of exorcism tridents. After a series of violent explosions, the once imposing cursed energy vortex suddenly seemed to lose its strength, shrinking from its thick, robust state into a pathetic, sickly, slow-spinning mess. Yuta Okatsu fired another cannon blast of positive cursed energy, neutralizing it into nothingness, and putting an end to the cursed energy storm. If it had been a curse user with an equivalent level of cursed energy and a strong curse technique, the group might have taken it a bit more seriously, but since you're a cursed spirit, aren't you just blown to bits? Even if this stillborn cursed spirit could have been successfully born, so what? What you were about to face was Yuta Okatsu, for whom outputting positive cursed energy via reverse curse technique is as easy as drinking water. Kagura Shin, who can use positive cursed energy at will. The final Shikigami of the 10 Shadows technique, enveloped in positive cursed energy, Banshin. Cursed Spirit. I heard you're weak against positive cursed energy. As the cursed energy storm dissipated, the barrier that had covered the entirety of Hokkaido slowly lifted. Naturally, the ordinary people who had survived within the barrier slowly regained consciousness. Some of them, upon opening their eyes without knowing what had happened, discovered a hill-like pile of human bones in front of them and fainted from fear on the spot. With the barrier lifted, communications returned to normal. Satoru Gojo immediately made a call to the members of Window and the assistant supervisors, telling them to bring as many people as possible to handle the aftermath. Cleaning up the traces and erasing memories is such a troublesome job. Good thing I don't have to do it myself. Satoru Gojo patted the bedrock ball again and said. Now there's only this one trouble left. Once he is dealt with, the external danger can be put to rest for a while. When that time comes, it'll be time to close the doors and deal with the problems inside our jujitsu world. He looked around at his students, and couldn't help but sigh in his heart. My students can all stand on their own now. Those rotten oranges in the higher UPS should move their butts. If they don't want to move their butts, then they can move their heads instead. Hashtag 86 Chapter 86 is finished. Hooray! Chapter 86, Conclusion, Flowers Falling. Kagura Shin had absolute confidence in his bedrock seal, but just in case, he stayed by the bedrock sphere for several days. Every day when Gojo Satoru came to take over, he would make a round trip to the back of Jujutsu High to collect experience points before returning to attempt the kill command. Finally, one day, he had a premonition that the command could be executed successfully, and he let out a long sigh of relief. Kill Sukuna. After confirming that the experience points had been deducted, Kagura Shin removed the layer of bedrock wall. Inside, just as he had imagined, there was nothing but a massive amount of experience points. Of course, the experience points dropped from Sukuna's death were incomparable to the amount consumed to execute the kill command. When he returned to Jujutsu High, Gojo Satoru found him. Have you finished dealing with that guy Sukuna, Shin? Yes. Gojo-sensei, are you ready to deal with all the higher UPS as well? Gojo Satoru nodded, then shook his head. It's simple to deal with them, but after they are gone, cursed spirits and jujitsu sorcerers will still exist. Perhaps if my students become the higher UPS now, the jujitsu world will enter a period of brilliance. But what about 100 years from now? 500 years from now? The higher UPS will inevitably become corrupt again. I know this is unavoidable. That's why I'm starting to agree with Geto's plan. I want to eradicate the source of cursed spirits. But for now, let's go twist the heads off that group of higher UPS. I've already given them a chance to live, so is power really more important than life? Twisting off the heads of the higher UPS didn't even require many people. Gojo Satoru and Kagura Shin were enough. The next day, bad news spread through the jujitsu world. Special grade sorcerers Gojo Satoru and Kagura Shin had rebelled, crossed out, launched a revolution, killing all the originally respected higher UPS, crossed out, a bunch of parasites. The new higher UPS were all filled by students from the Tokyo School and Kyoto Jujutsu High, along with trusted veteran jujitsu sorcerers like Kento Nanami. As for whether the students could handle the many affairs of the jujitsu world, Gojo Satoru said this. Regardless of who is in charge, the jujitsu world, which has long since rotted to the core, won't get any worse, right? Not long after, Maki also arrived at the Zenin family to undergo what Zenin Naobito called a trial, in accordance with her agreement with him. However, Maki's current strength was not something Zenin Naobito could compare to. After all, she could now clearly see Zenin Naobito's movement trajectory with her naked eye. She single-handedly beat everyone in the Zenin family to the ground, with the strong support of the newly promoted higher UPS Gojo Satoru and Kagura Shin, successfully became the current head of the Zenin family. Under her leadership, the Zenin family would only get better and better. Kamo Noritoshi, in front of everyone in the Kamo family, had a battle for the position of family head against Kamo Rin. In the end, Kamo Noritoshi won against Kamo Rin by a hair, thanks to his more perfected and comprehensive blood manipulation. Although the position of family head remained in his hands, the meaning now was completely different. A year later, Kagura-shin stood in front of the massive experience farms that had covered the entire back of Jujutsu High and turned to look at the group of people behind him. Gojo Satoru, Kamo Noritoshi, Maki Zenin. These three were the heads of the big three families. Yuta Okatsu, Yuki Tsukumo, Geto Suguru. They three represented the high-end combat power of the Jujutsu world. Meimei, Kento Nanami, Yaga Mazamichi, and Kyusuke Batsuya represented the backbone of the Jujutsu world. If everyone has no objections, then the cursed energy elimination plan can be implemented. After the cursed energy is eliminated, the power of Jujutsu sorcerers will not disappear, so there is no need to worry about being unemployed. After all, there are still many curse users. /command block automatically generates /command block automatically expands outward /clears cursed energy dissipating in the air /command block cancels visual effects, cancels collision volume. 4 commands were issued. The experience points that Kagura-shin had stored over the past year were slowly consumed as the command block expanded. Of course, it was impossible to complete the great feat of covering the globe with only the experience points he had stored in 1 year. This was a long-term plan. Over the next 10 years, Kagura-shin would continuously use commands to make the villagers he created build experience farms to produce experience points. Then, over the course of decades or even centuries, he would slowly cover the globe with command blocks, clearing all the cursed energy dissipating from the world. Without a source of cursed energy, cursed spirits would naturally not be generated. And without cursed spirits, the number of Jujutsu sorcerers would decrease year by year until there were none left, because Jujutsu sorcerers and cursed spirits were inherently in a relative balance. When one side was strong, the other would make up for it in quantity or quality. Similarly, when one side was weak, the other would slowly die out. But 100 years was enough for the Jujutsu world to slowly transition into the world of ordinary people. Perhaps, a long, long time from now, Jujutsu sorcerers would become just an ancient legend. End of the book. Everyone, please take a look at the author's note. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Novels Wonderland.